Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, let your thoughts drift gently as we take you on a peaceful journey. This is a space for calm, for quiet moments, and for the kind of stories that settle your heart and slow your breath. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and allow the world to soften around you. Now, let's begin with tonight's story. Today's story is titled Covenant of Three Pillars, a Triad of Worlds United in Living Memory. Captain Orion Vale leaned against the polished metal rail of the observation dome, his gaze tracing the faint glow of distant stars that surrounded the Remora, the newest deep space research vessel. Commissioned by the United Stellar Coalition. A single tear of excitement formed at the corner of his eye. No other human had ever stood here, peering out at the limitless expanse, at least not in this generation. Below him, the hum of the ship's fusion cores pulsed with a steady rhythm, a heartbeat for the vessel that carried the hopes of millions. Captain, came a gentle voice through the comm link. It belonged to Dr. Elena Maris, chief xenobiologist and Vale's closest friend since their academy days. She stepped into the dome, her lab coat crisp and unwrinkled, platinum hair tied back in a practical braid. In her hand, she held a data pad, its screen alive with sensor readouts and preliminary scans of the target planet. I've just finished calibrating the spectrograph. The readings from Hypnos 7 are extraordinary. I've never seen traces of that compound signature at this clarity before. Orion straightened. Hypnos 7, the fabled flower long theorized to produce an enzyme that, when combined with cryogenic suspension, could halt aging during hibernation. The coalition had spent decades chasing rumors, studying alien herbariums, and analyzing sample traces from meteorite fragments. Few believed it existed, fewer still that it could be found in the uncharted system of Myron. Show me, he said softly. Elena tapped a series of commands. Holographic graphs and molecular models projected into the air between them, shimmering with colors no terrestrial plant could ever exhibit. Orion's heart pounded as he saw the molecular lattice forming a complex chain of amino acids configured exactly as ancient research had predicted. You're certain? He asked, not wanting to hope too fiercely. As certain as any scientist can be with a remote scan. We'll confirm when we land, but Captain, this could change everything. He swallowed. Years of training, of frustration watching colleagues chase dead ends, all led to this moment. Inform the rest of the senior staff. We gather in the command center in 5. The command center was a hive of controlled activity. Senior officers and lead researchers clustered around the central hollow table, its surface dominated by a three-dimensional projection of Myron and its 6 planets. Dawn, the second world, orbited too close to its dwarf sun to be hospitable unless the unique bolonite atmosphere hinted at hidden biospheres beneath permanent cloud cover. Commander Leela Hayes, Vale's executive officer, stood at the table's edge, arms crossed. Next to her, Lieutenant Marcos Ridley, head of security, reviewed environmental protocols. Behind them, Jax Argus Neary, the ship's android science officer, adjusted his synthetic brow in thought. Even an artificial being could manifest excitement. "Captain," Hayes said quietly as Orion approached. "What's the status?" Orion interfaced with the hollow table. The image zoomed into Dawn's swirling storms. "Dr. Maris confirms Hypno's signatures at 2 major coordinates. One in the equatorial belt, one near the northern polar clearing. Both within reach of our shuttles." "Risk assessment?" Ridley asked, glancing at the data. "Minimal," Elena replied, stepping forward. "Gravity is 0. 92 g. Breathable air pockets may exist at ground level if our filters work. Radiation is within acceptable limits. Storm patterns are intense but predictable. We should send a dual shuttle team, one focusing on sample collection, the other on environmental mapping." Hayes nodded. "I'll coordinate with Chief Engineer Norin to ensure the shuttle's hull integrity holds against the bolonite particulates. Captain, you'll lead the landing party." He hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Prepare the Phoenix and the Aurora. We launch at 0800 standard ship time. I want full gear pressurized suits, rapid deploy sensors, plus autonomous drones for extended range. This is our moment." A ripple of excitement passed through the room. For the first time in decades, a human expedition might secure definitive proof of Hypnos 7. The implications were staggering: interstellar hibernation voyages, deep space colonization with crew emerging decades later unchanged, medical breakthroughs that could redefine aging itself. Later, in the quiet of the Remor's holodeck lounge, Orion reflected on the days ahead. His wrist display pinged with a message from Admiral Vanessa Cray: "Godspeed. History is watching." He allowed himself a small smile. Beside him, Elena folded her data pad. "You know," she said, voice soft in the empty room, "if we succeed, we'll be hailed as pioneers. But if we fail?" Her eyes met his, and he saw the same mixture of hope and fear he felt. "Then we'll come home with new questions to chase," he replied. "That's science." She laughed, a bright, honest sound that echoed off the hollow panels. "Only you could make failure sound so optimistic." He stood and offered his hand. "To Dawn and the flower that might change humanity." She placed her hand in his. "To Dawn." At dawn, ironically enough, 2 sleek shuttles pierced Myron's upper atmosphere. Orion's suit thrummed with power as the Phoenix's landing thrusters fired, carving a path through emerald green clouds. He gripped the controls, scanning the display for turbulence. Below, the world emerged, an endless rainforest canopy as far as the eye could see, interspersed with swirling mist and storm shafts. Bolonite rain pounded the shuttle's hull like 1,000 tiny hammers. Still, the sensors held true. Touchdown. Dust and droplets scattered in slow motion as the ramp descended. Orion took the first step onto Dawn's soil, feeling the damp earth beneath his boot. He inhaled filtered but caught a whisper of something fragrant, foreign. The promise of discovery ignited his soul. Behind him, Elena, Commander Hayes, and the security team poured out. Jax released its mechanical drones, which hummed into the air, mapping the surrounding flora. Even the ghettos of bioengineered life in the lab could never compare to this raw canvas of nature. Orion lifted his voice over the comms. Hypno 7 signatures indicate we're within 2 kilometers of the equatorial site. Move out, keep sensors active, and stay close. We don't know what else lurks beneath these trees. They advanced into the greenery, the shuttle doors hissing shut behind them. High above, the Remora waited, a silent guardian on the edge of history. On the ground, Captain Orion Vale and his team took humanity's first steps toward a new frontier, one that might redefine life, time, and the very essence of being alive. A low hum vibrated through Captain Orion Vale's suit as he followed the narrow trail carved through towering ferns and phosphorescent vines. The dense canopy overhead filtered dawn's twin suns into mottled emerald light, painting every leaf and droplet with an otherworldly glow. Behind him, Commander Leela Hayes and Dr. Elena Maris advanced in formation, while Lieutenant Marcos Ridley scanned the underbrush for any sign of movement. The remote drones, dispatched by Jax Argus Neuri, flitted above like mechanical fireflies, their sensors probing deeper into the verdant maze. "Sensor update," whispered Elena through her comm. Her voice was awash with exhilaration, tempered only by the discipline of her scientific training. Trace concentrations of Hypno 7 compound are increasing. We're zeroing in on something, possibly a patch of flowering specimens. Orion's pulse quickened. The first step onto dawn had been symbolic, these next steps might be transformative. He checked his wrist display, 2 kilometers to the equatorial clearing. A gentle slope rose before them, carpeted in bioluminescent mushrooms and punctuated by fossilized spore columns that looked like ancient monuments. Rain pattered against his helmet in a soft, rhythmic drumming bolonite moisture rich with suspended minerals that gave it a faint golden shimmer. "Stay alert," he reminded the team. "We don't know what else evolved in an atmosphere like this." Marcos halted, his helmet-mounted spotlight sweeping across a cluster of enormous seed pods dangling from sinewy branches. Each pod was nearly as tall as a person and covered in iridescent ridges. As the light played over their surfaces, subtle ripples of movement revealed slender tendrils inside, quivering as if alive. "Captain, these look sentient," he muttered. "Are they plant or animal?" Elena knelt to examine one. "Fascinating morphology. The tendrils appear to be sensory organs, perhaps detecting vibrations. But the cellular structure is clearly plant-based, cellulose-rich walls, chloroplast-like organelles. I've never seen anything like it." Orion crouched beside her. Could they be related to Hypno 7? An ancestral strain? "Possibly," Elena replied, eyes locked on her data pad. "I'll collect a microsample, but be careful. If they're semi-aware, we don't want to provoke an adverse reaction." As Elena carefully extracted a fragment with a nano blade, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep rumble reverberated through the roots of every nearby tree, and the air filled with an unsettling, low-frequency vibration. Seismic activity, Orion observed. Haze, status. Layla's HUD flickered as she checked readings. Minor tremor, but heading this way. Looks like a ridge fault line. Could be a collapse ahead. Let's move back to higher ground until it passes, Orion ordered. He led the group upward, toward a plateau that offered a panoramic view of the verdant valley below. The tremor peaked in a soft roar, then subsided after 30 seconds. Nothing collapsed, Leela reported, scanning the terrain. But the ground is fissured here. We probably triggered a resonance by moving near those pods. Marcos kicked at the earth. Those root systems must be massive, extending for kilometers. No wonder the slightest disturbance resonates. Orion nodded. Good work. Let's keep moving. Elena, status on the sample. She held up a slender vial under the visor light. Preliminary analysis shows microscopic clusters of hypnose-like proteins. Low concentrations, but structurally identical. We're on the right track. Encouraged, the team pressed on. The plateau gave way to a shallow basin ringed by colossal, spiral-shaped flora whose petals resembled sapphire horns opening to catch the ambient moisture. The source of the hypnose signature lay at the center, a small grove of delicate, pale lilac blossoms that radiated a soft bioluminescence against the twilight-filtered jungle. Their petals were translucent, each vein coursing with a silvery sap that pulsed in a rhythmic pattern like a heartbeat. There it is, Elena breathed, tears of joy misting her visor. Hypnose 7, the legendary crystalline bloom. Orion's throat tightened with emotion. He stepped closer, careful to remain on the secure path marked by his boot stabilizer grips. The grove seemed to welcome him, as if sensing his intentions. He extended a gloved hand over the nearest flower. Its petals fluttered gently, releasing a waft of fragrant spores that danced in the hollow projection of his scanner. Sample 2 will confirm, Elena murmured, kneeling. But we must respect the habitat. Minimal disturbance. As she collected a petal and a droplet of sap, the grove's ambient glow intensified, bathing the basin in spectral hues of violet and emerald. Ripples of light traversed every leaf and vine, illuminating hidden watchers, tiny arboreal creatures that resembled iridescent chameleons, their skin shifting patterns in concert with the flora's. Bioluminescence. A chorus of soft clicks and whistles rose from the undergrowth, as if the forest itself were communicating. Biotic resonance, Jax's android voice intoned through the calm. The entire ecosystem is woven into a network of bioluminescent signaling. Hypnose 7 may be the keystone species that synchronizes environmental rhythms. Orion exchanged a glance with Elena. Could this network pose a hazard if disrupted? Potentially, she said, her voice cautious. If we remove too many flowers or alter local conditions, the entire biosphere could react defensively. Sequestration of spores, sudden release of toxins, or systemic collapse of signal integrity. Then we proceed with utmost care, Orion said. He tapped his suit controls, activating a localized field that captured the remaining spores in a containment mesh. This containment grid will prevent spore dispersal beyond necessary sampling. The lab-coated xenobiologist nodded. Ingenious. Let's secure these and move to the extraction zone. Retracing their steps, the team returned to the plateau, where the dual shuttles, Phoenix and Aurora, gleamed like silver sentinels. Elysian creativity had modified the landing zone with temporary barriers designed to observe and contain specimens. As the shuttle doors hissed open, Dr. Maris carried the samples inside, while Leela oversaw the deployment of mobile incubation pods that would stabilize the precious proteins for transport. But the triumph was short-lived. A sudden shriek, somewhere between a cry and a hum, split the air. Orion spun, visor lights illuminating a giant, vine-like creature that had slipped undetected into their perimeter. Its body was coated in glossy, obsidian bark-like armor, and its many eyes glowed a luminescent amber. Defensive Sentinel, Jax announced. Species classification, Sentinella vigila. Likely a guardian organism for the Hypnose Grove. The giant vine creature coiled, eyes narrowing. Marcos raised his pulse rifle, but Orion held up a hand. Non-lethal protocol. Elena activated a sonic dispersal device that emitted low-frequency harmonics matching the grove's bioluminescent signals. The creature paused, its form rippling in recognition. Attempting comm sequence, she whispered. Arms of light from Jax's drones shimmered as they broadcast the recorded Hypnose Grove frequencies. The Sentinel sagged slightly, as though reassured, its eyes dimming. Stabilized, Jax reported. Creature returning to standby state. A collective exhale reverberated through the landing zone. Orion placed a hand over his chest. That was too close. They protect the grove fiercely. Dr. Maris suited up again. We'll need to include the Sentinel in our study. Its biochemistry could reveal how Hypnose 7 is defended in situ. As the shuttles prepared to ferry the samples and Sentinel specimens back to Remora, Captain Vale stood atop the boarding ramp, gazing at dawn's storm-swept skyline. He felt the weight of countless eyes, human and alien, on the success of this mission. The discovery of Hypnose 7 was only the beginning. To harness its power responsibly, to understand the symbiosis of an entire biosphere, would require more sacrifice, more insight, and a humility fit for true explorers. He radioed Admiral Cray. Admiral, this is Vale. We have secured initial Hypnose 7 samples and encountered native guardians. Preparing for extraction and extended study. Recommend full xenobiological analysis and environmental impact protocols before any further harvest. Over. A crackling reply came, acknowledged, Captain. Proceed with caution. The fate of interstellar hibernation depends on you all. Good luck. Orion switched off the comm, heart pounding with resolve. Let's go home, he said softly to his team. We have much work ahead. And as the Phoenix and Aurora lifted off, Dawn's whispered farewell echoed beneath the emerald canopy, a promise of secrets yet to be unveiled, adventures yet to be lived, and a future forever transformed by the fragile petals of Hypnos 7. Captain Orion Vale stepped off the boarding ramp of the Phoenix, the humid, mineral-laden air of dawn clinging to his suit as though reluctant to let him go. Behind him, the Aurora's ramp sealed with a pneumatic hiss, and both shuttles lifted back toward the Remora, carrying precious samples of Hypnos 7 tissue, sap, and spores. Yet Orion's mind remained fixed on the jungle sentinels. They had disturbed the towering vine creature and its kin, whose bioluminescent signals had pulsed like a heartbeat throughout the grove. He understood now that this world was far more than a repository of a single miraculous flower. It was an interconnected web of life, each thread vital to the others. Inside the Remora's biocontainment wing, Dr. Elena Maris and her team of xenobiologists worked under sterile lights that contrasted sharply with the emerald twilight of dawn. Elena stood at the central analysis station, magnified images of Hypnos 7 proteins dancing across hollow screens. Commander Leela Hayes watched over her shoulder, silent and focused, while Lieutenant Marcos Ridley monitored security feeds that showed the shuttle bays and the mobile incubation pods. Between them, the android science officer Jax Argus Neary hovered, data ports at his fingertips. Sample integrity remains high, Elena reported, her voice a mixture of triumph and concern. However, initial assays indicate that the Hypnos 7 enzyme complex exhibits unstable conformational shifts when isolated from its native spore matrix. She tapped her datapad, and a three-dimensional molecular model rotated in mid-air, revealing delicate spirals and branching nodes. These shifts could lead to rapid denaturation if we don't maintain specific environmental parameters: temperature, humidity, even bioluminescent light frequencies. Orion frowned. So we can't simply mass-produce the compound in standard lab vats. Not without recreating key aspects of the grove's ecosystem, Elena replied. The sentinel organisms likely play a role in stabilizing the protein lattice. Their own biochemistry may release molecular chaperones or signaling peptides that protect Hypnos 7. She turned to Jax. Argus, status on the Sentinella Vigila specimens. Jax's synthetic voice was calm, emotionless yet somehow soothing. Specimens are in secure stasis under low-frequency luminescence. Preliminary sequencing indicates the presence of unique lectin analogs that bind to the Hypnos 7 backbone. I recommend integrating sentinel cell cultures into our bioreactor feedback loop. Hayes nodded vigorously. I concur. We need a bioincubator chamber that mimics the grove's spectral rhythms. I'll coordinate with Chief Engineer Norin to retrofit one of the shuttle labs. She hesitated, then added quietly, Captain, what about the security implications? If these creatures respond defensively off-world. Orion met her gaze. We'll maintain the field containment grid and enforce strict quarantine protocols. But we can't ignore the data these sentinels hold. Their genetic code may reveal how Dawn's ecosystem maintains equilibrium. He squared his shoulders. Proceed with Argus's recommendation, Commander. And keep Marines on alert in case of containment breach. He paused. Elena, schedule me an update in 2 hours. I want a full report before making any decisions about large-scale sampling. Elena bowed her head. Understood, Captain. In the observation gallery, Orion found solace staring out at Dawn's swirling storms. The Remora drifted in geosynchronous orbit, its engines silent in the void. Through the colossal viewports, he watched the twilight green glow of bolonite clouds rolling over the planet's surface, unaware of the delicate dance unfolding within the jungle below. A hologram pinged at his wrist, Admiral Cray. With a swipe, Orion opened the secure channel. Captain, came the Admiral's crisp voice. Status report. Orion took a breath. We have initial Hypno 7 samples, but we've discovered that isolation destabilizes the complex. We've also recovered Sentinella vigila specimens whose lectin proteins appear integral to protein stabilization. He outlined the containment measures, the retrofit plans, and the need for an ecosystem-mimic bioreactor. I recommend a temporary slowdown on bulk harvesting until we understand the biosphere's interdependencies. There was a long pause, as if the Admiral weighed each word. Proceed with caution, Captain. Our mandate is to acquire Hypno 7 for the Coalition's long-term exploration, but not at the expense of ecological collapse or unintended biohazards. Preserve the grove's integrity. Do you understand? Crystal clear, Admiral, Orion replied. He ended the call and let his gaze drift back to the planet. He whispered, "We'll do this right, for them." 2 hours later, Orion returned to the bio-containment wing, where Elena awaited his arrival. The retrofitted shuttle lab lay just beyond a reinforced airlock, a chamber transformed by engineers into a miniature grove. LED arrays emitted soft violet and green pulses matching the wavelengths recorded in situ. Temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition were tuned to within fractions of their natural ranges. Multiple transparent columns housed sentinel cell cultures, their tendrils swaying in nutrient-rich fluid, while Hypno 7 samples floated in adjacent vials within a similar bioluminescent vat. Elena greeted him with a tired smile. "We're ready for the first integration test." She gestured toward 2 adjacent pods. Pod A is our control, Hypno 7 protein in standard growth medium. Pod B includes a diluted sentinel lectin extract at a 1:100 ratio. Orion nodded. "Let's see the difference." With careful precision, Elena initiated the test sequence. A soft hum filled the chamber as microfluidic pumps circulated the solutions. Holographic readouts displayed real-time structural integrity metrics. Within minutes, Pod A's metrics began to fall. The protein visualizations flickered and unraveled. Pod B, however, glowed with stable lattice structures, pulsing gently in sync with the chamber's light cycles. Jax's voice chimed in. Pod B exhibits a 280% increase in structural half-life. Lectin interaction confirmed as stabilizing agent. Elena exhaled, relief shining in her eyes. We did it. We've proven that sentinel proteins are key to Hypnose 7 viability. She turned to Orion. Now we need to analyze which genes encode these lectins, synthesize them, and replicate the pathway in our bioreactors. Orion allowed himself a rare moment of triumph. This changes everything. We could engineer a closed-loop system that produces Hypnose 7 without uprooting Dawn's ecosystem. He placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. Excellent work. But as they shared that hopeful moment, a low alarm sounded. Red lights flashed. In the nutrient tanks, cultured samples of Sentinella vigila had begun to move with deliberate purpose, their tendrils pressing against the transparent walls. The bioluminescent glow intensified, casting the entire lab in an eerie, pulsing light. Jax's calm voice turned urgent. Containment grid at 92%. Sentinella cultures are exhibiting resonance coupling. They appear to communicate across the medium, synchronizing growth. Elena's eyes widened. They're adapting to the lab environment, activating biofilm pathways. Orion drew his sidearm, a non-lethal stunner, and motioned for the Marines who had assembled behind the observation window. Stand by. If they breach, we neutralize and seal the chamber. Before anyone could move, the entire pod B glowed white-hot. The fluid boiled, steam filling the chamber, and the glass shivered. With a final, resonant pulse, the pod's wall shattered, sending boiling nutrient fluid spraying onto the floor in a hiss of steam. Glass shards scattered, and the lectin-enriched medium mixed with the control samples. The bioluminescent arrays flickered, then died, plunging the chamber into dim emergency lighting. The crash echoed like thunder. Orion shouted, "Back away. Seal the airlock." Marines sealed the door. Elena coughed, wiping sweat and mist from her visor. They merged their cultures. The sentinel proteins self-replicated, creating a hybrid that overwhelmed the pod's structure. Orion activated the lockdown. We need to evacuate all non-essential personnel and vent the chamber. Quarantine this sector until we can assess the hybrid organism. Elena's voice trembled as she caught her breath. Captain, this changes things. The sentinel species isn't just a passive stabilizer. It can adapt aggressively. We must be exceptionally careful moving forward. Orion stood in the emergency lit lab, the acrid smell of burnt biomedia hanging in the air. He realized that Dawn's secret was alive in more ways than they had imagined, and that every step forward carried unforeseen risks. But he also felt a surge of determination. This was the frontier, equal parts wonder and peril. He would face it with the same resolve that had brought him to Dawn in the first place. He turned to Elena. Prepare your team. We study the hybrid under controlled conditions. but we don't destroy it. We learn from it. He paused, looking at the shattered pod. This is why we came, to understand life in all its forms, no matter how dangerous. As alarms ceased and the Remor's crew swarmed to contain the crisis, Captain Orion Vale knew that the discovery of Hypno 7 was only the beginning of their journey. The true challenge lay in forging a path through the labyrinth of life that Dawn embodied one heartbeat at a time. Captain Orion Vale stood before the reinforced observation window, watching as Marines in biohazard suits and xenobiology technicians in protective slates swarmed the quarantined lab. The broken shards of Pod B lay scattered on the floor below, faint wisps of residual bioluminescent fluid smoldering like embers in the emergency lighting. Every fiber of Dawn's hidden ecosystem had proven more resilient and more unpredictable than anyone aboard the Remora had anticipated. Status report, Orion called to Commander Leela Hayes, who hovered beside him, arms folded but eyes tense. Leela tapped her wrist console. Hybrid organism secured within secondary containment. It has self-assembled into a cluster of sinewy tendrils and crystalline nodules, roughly the size of a man's torso. We've isolated its vocal frequencies. They match both the sentinel species patterns and a subharmonic of the Hypno 7 SAF pulses. She met Orion's gaze. It's literally woven together life essence and the medicinal enzyme. Dr. Elena Maris stepped forward, still clutching her data pad. The hybrid's genome is an unprecedented chimera. Lectin-binding proteins fused with Hypno's macro chains, plus novel sequences we've never seen, likely triggered by stress signals in our lab environment. She exhaled. If we can decode those sequences, we might replicate a stable synthetic pathway. Orion nodded, feeling the weight of discovery and peril entwined. But we can't rush. We need a methodical approach. First, keep it contained. Second, gather detailed genomic and proteomic data. Third, reconvene with Admiral Cray and the Senior Science Council for approval before any large-scale synthesis. Elena's lips curved with determined relief. Understood. I'll assign 2 xenogenomicists and 1 bioethicist to the project immediately. Leela keyed her console. I'm also deploying security scanners around the nearby decks. If this hybrid escapes, it could at worst flatten an entire corridor, or at best wreak biological havoc. Orion placed a hand on Layla's shoulder. Good. Let's stabilize the situation. Then we continue. 2 hours later, the hybrid sat within its isolation chamber, an eerie glow emanating from within layers of transparent shielding. Automated spectrometers recorded shifting light signatures, and robotic arms delicately extracted micron-scale samples for mass spectrometry. Orion, Elena, and Jax Neary gathered at a tactical hollow table just outside the chamber, reviewing cross-sectional molecular diagrams. Notice here, Jax intoned, his synthetic voice calm and precise, a repeating heptapetide motif that appears to bind adjacent Hypnose monomers in a stabilized alpha helix. This motif is not present in pure Hypnose 7 or in sentinel lectins, but emerges in the hybrid genome, likely a stress-induced splice. The hollow model highlighted the motif in glowing cyan. Elena tapped the projection. If we can synthesize that heptapeptide, we could embed it into our recombinant protein assembly. It could prevent denaturation entirely. Orion's eyebrows rose. And that would mean stable Hypnose 7 production without needing whole sentinel cells. Potentially, yes, Elena replied. We'd only need to produce a short peptide alongside the enzyme far more efficient and ecologically responsible. Leela exhaled sharply. Ethically, though, we must consider the hybrid sapiens. It may possess rudimentary awareness. Destroying it for its code without consent would breach multiple coalition treaties. Elena's face sobered. You're right. We need the bioethicist's input before we terminate the culture. But we also risk mutation or escape if we leave it alive too long without full containment. Orion traced the edge of the hollow table. Balance risk and morality. We quarantine it indefinitely until the council convenes. In the meantime, we simulate its genome in virtual models. Extract data far enough to synthesize the motif, then euthanize the chamber population under controlled conditions. He met Elena's eyes. We owe it no less. Elena nodded, eyes glossy but resolute. I'll initiate the virtual simulation protocols immediately. That evening, Orion retreated to his quarters, the low hum of the Remera's life support systems a faint music in the background. He sat at his desk, the hollow screen projecting dawn's swirling clouds and the faint glow of the jungle beneath. He traced a finger through the air, rotating an image of the hybrid's genomic map. Every colored strand represented hope and hazard. His wrist console pinged, a message from Marine Lieutenant Sato. Captain, patrol drones have detected unusual seismic tremors on Dawn's equator, near the original Hypnose Grove coordinates. Magnitude too small to be natural. You might want to see. Orion's pulse quickened. He summoned Layla's feed. Patch me through to the comm array. A live feed from the dropship's remote seismic sensors flickered into view. Beneath the alien moonlight, the dense canopy pulsed with faint bioluminescent ripples, waves of light that traveled across the treetops like living auroras. But every few seconds, the pattern broke, a cluster of waves converged on a point, then vanished, as if something moved beneath the soil, disturbing the subterranean network. Are those creatures? Elena whispered over the comm. Orion's jaw tightened. Could be sentinel roots reacting to the genetic theft, or another species responding to our presence. He turned to Leela. Immediate launch prep. I want a reconnaissance mission down there with drone support. We need to understand what we've awakened. Layla's expression sharpened. Understood. I'll coordinate the Phoenix driver and assign a tactical squad. Orion ended the comm and exhaled slowly. The delicate balance of Dawn's ecosystem had been disturbed, and now it rippled outward in unseen currents. he would lead the next expedition personally, if necessary. This mission was no longer just a hunt for a miracle compound. It was a delicate negotiation with alien life itself. 15 minutes later, Orion suited up once more, the Remor's shuttle bay a blur of green and orange under emergency overheads. He climbed into the Phoenix with a hand-picked team, Elena to monitor bioreadings, Lieutenant Ridley with his pulse rifle on non-lethal setting, and 2 drone operators to pilot the spider-like seismic sensors. Commander Hayes coordinated from the bay's control console. Estimated travel time to the groove is 12 minutes, she said, voice calm. Sensors have mapped a safe approach corridor. Expect heavy canopy interference. Orion tapped his helmet. Phoenix launch in T-10. The shuttle door sealed, engines ignited, and the Phoenix shot through the ship's outer bay doors into darkness spangled with starlight. Orion felt the familiar thrill of space flight, but colder this time, heavy with uncertainty. They plunged through the upper atmosphere, breaking through neon green clouds into the swirling golden mist of bolonite rain. He checked his HUD. Forward sensors flickered as the drones ahead transmitted back grainy images of massive vines and fern towers, all pulsing with that bioluminescent heartbeat. Steady, Orion murmured. Let's find out what's down there. As the Phoenix descended toward the coordinate, Orion couldn't shake the feeling that dawn was watching its routes, its creatures, even its very soil attuned to every human action. He braced himself. The next encounter could define humanity's relationship with this living planet. Failure to proceed carefully would risk everything they discovered so far. But success could mean forging a partnership with life forms far older than Earth's forests, life forms with secrets that might rewrite the very definition of biology. He opened his comm. All stations, be ready for ground contact. And remember, respect the balance. Hypno 7 was only one piece of the puzzle. Let's not lose the rest. Below them, the jungle stirred. And the heartbeat of dawn pulsed louder than ever. Captain Orion Vale's pulse raced as the Phoenix's landing thrusters cut through the shimmering bolonite rain. The shard bright cockpit windows fogged instantly, but beyond the glaze he could make out the outline of massive root pillars, living columns of wood and vine laced with bioluminescent filaments. The tremor signals had led them here, to a subterranean nexus where dawn's heartbeat echoed deepest. Touchdown in 30 seconds, called Commander Leela Hayes over the comm, voice steady despite the electric tension. Ground is soft, expect root webbing just beneath the surface. Orion nodded and checked his HUD. 2 remote seismic drones had burrowed ahead, their spider-legged frames humming as they probed the soil. Real-time readouts showed a complex lattice of tunnels and chambers carved by sentinel roots, some glowing with the same pulse he'd seen in the broken pod. Disembark on my mark, he said, activating his suit lights. Elena, you cascade your bioscanner. Ridley, keep your rifle ready but on stun. We move as one. The Phoenix's ramp extended with a metallic sigh, and Orion led the squad into a thicket of luminescent mycelia that carpeted the ground. Each step triggered a cascade of light, as if the forest floor itself was greeting them. The air smelled of damp earth and something sweeter like fermenting spores. Elena, status on tremor origin. He whispered. She tapped her tablet. Approximately 50 meters east. Seismic waves converge there. Could be a root junction or a creature burrow. They advanced, boots sinking into soft fungal mats. The giant vines overhead swayed in patterns that seemed almost sentient, as though observing. Suddenly a low rumble vibrated through the ground. The squad froze. Here, Elena pointed to a half-buried chamber entrance formed by 4 colossal roots curved into an archway. Within, faint amber light pulsed. Orion crouched. Looks like a natural root cathedral. Those drones must be inside. He keyed his comm. Phoenix Control, send in drones live feed. Tiny screens flickered to life on his HUD, grainy, green-toned images of a cavernous hollow lined with phosphorescent bark. At its center, a pulsating root node large as a man's chest throbbing with hypnose-like frequencies. And circling it were dozens of small, bioluminescent creatures, arboreal chameleons, the size of house cats, their skins shifting patterns to match the pulsation. They seemed to guard the node. Sentinel brood, Elena breathed. They rear this root cluster, possibly nurturing new growth. How many? Ridley murmured, leveling his rifle. Non-lethal, Orion reminded him. We're observers first. He stepped forward, voice gentle but firm. We come in peace. We seek only to understand. The creatures froze, heads swiveling in unison. Their luminous scales brightened, sending ripples of light through the chamber. Then, without warning, the pulsing root node emitted a low, resonant hum, almost a call. Elena, can you translate? Orion asked. She raised her scanner to her visor. They're broadcasting a stabilization frequency like an invitation. Possibly expecting symbiotic partners, not invaders. Orion took a breath. Lower your weapons. Let's respond in kind. He activated his suit's harmonic emitter at the same sub-frequency. A soft counter hum filled the archway. At once, the sentinel brood relaxed. They parted to reveal a path deeper into the chamber. Through the bioluminescent arch, Orion glimpsed tendril corridors that led toward a glowing green sanctum. We follow, he said, heart pounding. But stay alert. They pressed forward, leaving their weapons behind. Each footfall set the fungal carpet aglow, leaving a trail of transient light. The pulsing root ahead grew larger, its tendrils stretching like arms reaching toward them. Between the roots, clusters of Hypnose 7 blossoms peaked, delicate, crystalline petals shimmering with promise. Elena knelt to examine one. Concentrations here are off the chart. This must be the ecological core, the root mother. One of the bioluminescent chameleons climbed onto the root surface, pressing a bright patch of its skin against a blossom. The flower responded by increasing its glow, sending waves of harmonic light through the chamber. Elena's scanner sang in affirmation. Orion felt a surge of awe. This is more than an enzyme source, it's a living symphony. We must protect it. He turned to his team. Document everything. Collect data samples only with the node's consent. If our hum resonated, it may grant us limited access. They obeyed, running scans, and cataloging spectral data. Outside the root cathedral, the rain ceased, and dawn's twin suns broke through the canopy in diffused shafts of green-tinted light. The sentinel brood fell silent, their guard shifted from wary to watchful. As Orion prepared to transmit their findings to the Remora, his comm crackled with Admiral Cray's voice. "Captain, your update." He smiled to himself. "Admiral, we've discovered the ecological heart of Hypnos 7, a living root nexus that responds to harmonic resonance. We've earned its trust by matching its song. Requesting permission to study its symbiotic network in situ." He paused, eyes on the glowing node. "This world isn't ours to conquer, it's ours to converse with." Below, the root mother pulsed in acknowledgement. And high above, the Remora hovered, a silent witness to humanity's first conversation with an alien ecosystem. Captain Orion Vale stood beneath the iridescent glow of dawn's twin suns as they filtered through the canopy above, casting shifting patterns of emerald and gold across the forest floor. At his side, Dr. Elena Maris crouched before the heart of the root nexus, the living mother, her holoscanner recording every nuance of the pulsing network. Commander Leela Hayes and Lieutenant Marcos Ridley watched over their shoulders, awestruck but vigilant, while Jack's Argus Neary hovered silently, its optical arrays whirring. "We've catalogued the harmonic frequencies, the lectin motifs, and the bioluminescent signaling patterns," Elena reported softly, voice almost reverent. "But there's something more. I'm detecting a subtle genetic signature embedded within the membrane of each Hypnos bloom. It's as if the flower carries a message, a blueprint for co-creation." Orion's heart pounded. "A covenant, then. The ecosystem invites us not just to take, but to give something back." He reached out, placing his hand gloved, but still against one of the glowing petals. A warm pulse echoed through his suit. "If we breach that covenant, we risk collapsing the entire network." Layla's gaze flicked to the sentinel brood circling the chamber's entrance, their chameleon-like skins now patterned in calming hues. "They've accepted us for now. But what happens when we leave and bring back only samples? Will they remember our intrusion?" Jack's synthetic voice chimed in. "Sentinel species possess long-term memory nodes. Their bio-network could record our molecular imprint. If future expeditions ignore the harmonic covenant, they may trigger a defensive cascade ecosystem reset protocols." Elena stood and looked each of them in the eye. "We must formulate a true exchange. The covenant of roots demands reciprocity. Hypnos 7 is a gift, but it expects an offering, our knowledge, our respect, and potentially a living seed of ourselves." Orion inhaled deeply. "Then we propose a pact. We'll share our data, our simulations of the ecosystem's rhythms, and we'll commit to establishing a protected reserve on Dawn. No further harvest without explicit renewal of the covenant. In return, the Living Mother grants us sustainable access to Hypnose blooms. Leela nodded. I'll draft the protocol for renunciation of mass extraction, and archive all recordings within a coalition-mandated treaty file. She tapped her comm. Remora to Admiral Cray, we have formalized a reciprocal arrangement with Dawn's biosphere. Requesting legal integration into coalition charter. As Leela transmitted, Elena placed several microcapsules of synthesized lectin peptides and harmonic frequency modulators into a moss-lined wooden box that the Sentinel brood had allowed near the Root Mother. It looked primitive Earth-made, but the contrast of human craftsmanship against alien bioluminescence felt fitting. An offering from your distant cousins, Elena whispered. She stepped back, and Orion watched as a cluster of Sentinel brood approached the box, touching its contents with gentle tendrils. The Root Mother's pulse synchronized for a moment, then settled into a deeper, steadier tone, a sign of acceptance. Covenant sealed, Orion announced, relief and wonder mingling in his chest. Let us begin the harvest. Limited, regulated, respectful. Back aboard the Remora, beneath sterilized lights in the biolab, Elena and her team worked to refine the extraction protocols. Each step mimicked the Grove's own cycles, 24 hours of bioluminescent light followed by 12 hours of deep resonance sleep mode, precise humidity control, and the infusion of lectin peptide. Offerings to maintain protein stability. JAXA's virtual simulations iterated thousands of times, isolating the most efficient synthetic pathways. Orion convened a council meeting in the command center. Senior officers, leading scientists, and even a bioethics delegate from the coalition attended via HoloLink. Thanks to the Covenant of Roots, Orion began, we have a breakthrough, a closed-loop bioreactor that yields stable Hypnose 7 at 75% efficiency compared to Grove-harvested samples. We no longer need mass harvesting or disruptive field operations. Applause rippled around the council. Elena presented her data, charts of protein integrity over time, comparative analyses of enzyme activity in various containment protocols, and simulations showing the hybrid lectin motif stabilizing. Roll. JAX elaborated on the Sentinel species' encoded memory sequences and recommended further study of their neural chemical networks, perhaps a future chapter in xenopsychology. But not everyone was satisfied. A stern-faced Admiral Cray's hologram flickered to life. Captain Vale, while the scientific achievements are commendable, we must consider strategic implications. Hypnose 7 is a game-changer. Capital pressure, military dormancy, demographic shifts. Are we prepared for the socio-political consequences? Orion paused. Admiral, we have the regulatory framework, no release beyond sanctioned medical and exploration programs, strict oversight, and ongoing renewal of the Covenant. We will proceed with caution. Cray's eyes narrowed. Ensure that Covenant remains inviolable. Should any faction attempt to weaponize or profiteer without renewal, Dawn's biosphere must be capable of defensive measures. We can't allow unilateral exploitation. Orion nodded firmly. Understood. We'll integrate Sentinel network parameters into our planetary defense protocols. This is a living planet, not a commodities depot. The Admiral flickered and went dark. A heavy silence settled. Leela broke it. Well done, team. We've honored our promise to Dawn and secured Hypno 7 responsibly. Elena exhaled, exhausted but exhilarated. This is the beginning of a new era interstellar partnership between human and alien life. Orion looked around at each face, human, android, and even the faint holographic shimmer of the Covenant box on the central table. We set a precedent today. Let every corner of the United Stellar Coalition remember that true exploration demands humility, reciprocity, and respect. That evening, Orion returned to the observation gallery. The living mother's subsurface hum echoed in his memory as he gazed down at dawn, a swirl of emerald storms, bioluminescent forests, and flickers of sentinel lights. He knew the real work lay ahead, monitoring the Covenant, nurturing the Alliance, and ensuring that both species thrived. He activated a private comm channel to Elena. Thank you for guiding us through the heart of dawn. What's next on your agenda? Her amused voice came through softly, translating the Sentinel signals into a usable data language, perhaps a universal dialect. Then I'll begin drafting the first installment of the Biosymbiosis Treaty. Orion smiled. I'll toast that at dinner. Until then, Captain out. He powered down the comm, taking one last look at the living planet below. Dawn's heartbeat was his heartbeat now, a reminder that discovery carried responsibility, and that the greatest rewards came to those who listened first, spoke second, and promised to keep their word. Above all else, Captain Orion Vale awoke in his quarters to the gentle hum of the Remor's life support systems and the distant, rolling thunder of dawn's bolonite storms echoing through the ship's resonance chambers. He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and glanced at the hollow screen beside his bunk. A single notification blinked: data transfer complete. Sentinel signal log update available. He tapped the screen. A cascade of spectral readouts filled the air, charting the bioluminescent patterns transmitted by the Sentinel brood since his last departure from the Root Cathedral. At first glance, everything appeared stable. The harmonic cadences remained consistent, the node pulses returned exactly to their pre-offering rhythms, and the miniature root nexus on the ships research deck had settled into a gentle, oscillating glow. But then Orion noticed an anomaly. A series of micropulses, barely perceptible deviations in amplitude, had begun to appear around 30 hours ago. They clustered at irregular intervals, like whispers in an otherwise steady heartbeat. His jaw tightened. Elena, he said aloud into his comm link. I need you in Biolab Alpha 2 immediately. 30 minutes later, Dr. Elena Maris joined him at the observation window overlooking the hybrid containment module. She carried her tablet, brows furrowed. Captain, you called. Orion pointed to the sensor overlay on the viewport. Look at this sequence. He highlighted the micropulses. These weren't there during the Covenant ritual. They began about 20 cycles after we left Dawn's surface. Could it be a delayed resonance from the offering? Elena studied the data. It's possible. The Sentinel network may have been encoding a secondary message, an adaptive response we induced. Have Jax run a Fourier analysis on the modified frequencies. He nodded and tapped his suit comp. Argus, prioritize spectral decomposition of the Sentinel log with filters for subharmonic modulation. Analysis in progress, Jax replied calmly. Elena frowned. If these pulses carry instructions, genetic or behavioral, it could indicate that Dawn's biosphere is continuing the Covenant dialogue without us. We may be recipients of a living update. Orion exhaled. Or a warning. Let's know for sure. He turned to the biolab's reinforced door and keyed the access panel. Come on. Inside the lab, the hybrid containment pod glowed softly. Around it, several Sentinel tendril samples floated in nutrient-rich fluid. Elena directed Orion to the central console. Argus should have the analysis by now. Within moments, Jax's voice returned. Captain, Dr. Maris, the micropulses, when decomposed, reveal a series of chemical compound sequences corresponding to undiscovered lectin analogs. They encode instructions for the Sentinel lectins to produce specific enzymatic adjustments under non-natural light conditions. A holographic sequence unfurled before them, a genetic patch that, if introduced, could dramatically alter the stability of the Hypnose 7 enzyme lattice. Orion's heart pounded. So Dawn's ecosystem is sending us a molecular update, and it's being applied autonomously in our bioreactor. Precisely, Jax confirmed. The pod's integration protocols activated the update. The hybrid culture is now expressing these novel lectin analogs. Elena stared at the swirling samples. That means the Covenant isn't static, it's a living treaty. Every offering triggers a new cycle of adaptation. We assumed reciprocity was a one-time exchange, but Dawn expects an ongoing partnership, with both sides contributing. Orion rubbed his chin. We must decide whether to incorporate these instructions. They could enhance our yield and increase stability, but at what risk? We're effectively granting the Sentinel network direct influence over our biofabrication. Elena's voice was measured. We can reverse engineer the update in silico, then choose whether or not to implement it. Or we can refuse and see how the network responds. If it perceives a breach, it may sever the Covenant, or worse. Orion turned to the glass-walled hybrid pod. The creature's crystalline nodules shimmered as if aware of their scrutiny. We did promise to honor the Covenant, he said softly. But we also promised to protect both species. Unconditional acceptance of every update could give Dawn's biosphere unchecked power within human systems. Layla's voice crackled over the lab intercom. Captain, unauthorized access detected at sub-level storage. Security breach in the genetics archive. Orion and Elena exchanged alarmed glances. On my way, Orion replied, rushing for the door. Elena followed, data pad clutched to her chest. Down on genetic research level 4, alarms pulsed and red floodlights bathed the corridor. Marine sealed the wing as ordnance specialist Theron crouched over a shattered containment unit. He looked up when Orion arrived. They took the Sentinel lectin stock 5 vials, gone. And left this. He held up a fragment of lab-grade glass etched with a single, repeating bioluminescent pattern, the Sentinel brood's signature. Elena knelt to inspect the pattern under her visor light. They're sending us a demand. They want the raw lectins, unmodified, removed from our control. They expect unmediated access. Orion's eyes narrowed. But we can't just hand them everything. They could restructure Hypnos 7 en masse, bypass our safeguards, or worse, introduce aggressive strains into human populations. Commander Hayes arrived with 2 Marines. Sir, I've locked down all entry points. No one's entering or leaving the wing without biometric clearance. Orion sighed. Time to find our saboteur. This is no civilian researcher, it's someone with security clearance and biological expertise. He turned to Elena. Any idea who could bypass our protocols and understand the Sentinel scripts? Elena's face grew pale. The only person with that deep knowledge is Dr. Navin Vital, our chief xenobioethicist. But he was an ardent advocate for full disclosure of Sentinel code. He argued for unrestricted sharing as part of the Covenant. I confronted him yesterday about the risks. Orion's jaw clenched. Locate him. I want him in custody for questioning. Meanwhile, Jax's intercom chimed. Captain, priority feed, incoming hologram from Dr. Vital. Orion squared his shoulders. Patch him through. The hololink flashed to life, revealing Dr. Navin Vital's disheveled figure. His eyes glimmered with fervor and fear. Captain, you must listen. The Covenant is evolutionary. Dawn's biosphere granted us a gift, but only if we trust it unconditionally. By withholding the Sentinel lectins, you're breaking the pact. Orion's voice was calm but firm. Dr. Vital, unauthorized removal of genetic materials is a breach of ship regulations and potentially violates the Covenant on our terms. You risk turning the treaty into warfare. Vital shook his head vehemently. No. Dawn's intelligence demands unity. We must give them everything, only then will the root network share its full blueprint for planetary healing. You're stalling evolution. Elena stepped forward, anger in her eyes. You stole samples, you falsified security logs, and you manipulated the Covenant to suit your ideology. You endangered both species by removing our ability to decide when and how to adapt. Vital's expression twisted. Human hubris, always wanting control. You think you can negotiate with living forests and set arbitrary limits. The Sentinel network doesn't operate on human ethics. It operates on symbiosis. He held up a vial. I tried to protect a reserve on Dawn. Only the raw lectins can reset the equilibrium in case of destabilization. His voice cracked. If you lock me up, you lock out the future. Orion's gaze was steely. I'm locking you down. Ethical dialogue requires consent and transparency. You acted alone. That's a violation of everything the Covenant stands for. He raised his voice. Security detail detain Dr. Vital and recover the stolen samples. Back in the hybrid containment lab, Elena watched as Marines escorted Vital away. She exhaled, exhausted. Orion joined her. Good work, he said quietly. Now we secure the wing and evaluate the Sentinel update on our terms. Elena nodded. We'll reverse engineer the genetic patch in virtual isolation. No direct implementation until the Council approves. And we'll strengthen our protocols to prevent future breaches. Jax's voice resonated softly. Analysis confirms that the update, while potentially beneficial, carries embedded safety checks only operable within Dawn's atmospheric conditions. Without the root network present, unfiltered application could produce unpredictable biohazards. Orion placed a hand on the containment pod's glass. The hybrid within glowed softly, its crystalline nodules refracting the lab lights like trapped stars. We respect the Covenant by honoring its spirit, not its every command. We protect Dawn, and we protect ourselves equally. Elena smiled wearily. A delicate balance, Captain. He returned her smile. Symbiosis has its shadows. We'll navigate them together. As the Remor's corridors settled back into their steady rhythms and the Sentinel beacon pulses resumed their regular patterns, Captain Vale knew that the Covenant with Dawn was stronger for its trials. Every new message from the living planet would bring choices, gifts or tests, and each would shape humanity's path among the stars. And no matter how deep the shadows grew, he would ensure their light remained true. Captain Orion Vale stood at the viewport of the Remor's briefing room, staring down at the swirl of green storms that cloaked Dawn's surface. 36 hours had passed since the fallout with Dr. Vital and the unauthorized genetic theft. During that time, Elena Maris and Jax had fully reversed the clandestine Sentinel update, isolating its sequences in silico. Now, with the Covenant reaffirmed on strictly negotiated terms, Orion prepared to lead a second landing party back to the planet, this time to deliver the purified peptide offering that would stabilize the symbiotic bond without compromising human oversight. Commander Leela Hayes entered, data pad in hand. Captain, we prepped the Phoenix and Aurora for simultaneous descent. Environmental scans show the Sentinel brood's pulse has returned to pre-breach rhythms. Sector PD-7 is clear, but bioscanners detect elevated lectin concentrations drifting westward outside the original sanctuary. Orion tapped his comm badge. All stations, this is Vale, we're reinstating the landing party at Site Alpharoot. Same team as before, plus Dr. Anikajo for linguistic pattern analysis. Launch in 15. He faced Leela. I want redundant harmonic emitters, low-frequency protocols, and 3 mapping drones. No unsanctioned genetic transfers, only the purified peptide formula in microcapsules. Leela nodded crisply. Understood. I'll brief Dr. Joe on the linguistic cues and harmonic responses. 80 minutes later, the 2 shuttles pierced the bolonite cloud layer, settling amid the luminescent root pillars. Captain Vale led the team. Elena Maris, Lieutenant Marcos Ridley, Dr. Anikajo, and 2 drone specialists onto the forest floor. The air felt charged, electric with possibility. The Sentinel brood greeted them with a muted, respectful dimming of their bioluminescence. Elena, status. Orion murmured as they followed the phosphorescent trail. Peptide readings are nominal, she replied, carefully mounting a microcapsule dispenser to her belt. The purified lectin analogs are stable at ambient conditions. We're carrying 3 days' worth of graft quality material. Dr. Joe knelt before a cluster of sapphire-tinted ferns. I've decoded the latest Sentinel pulses. They're chanting a 5-tone tonal pattern almost like a protective invocation. It may mark the boundary of their extended grove. She tapped her tablet, projecting a wavering spectrogram. If we respond with the appropriate peptide infusion at each boundary node, we can resync the network and secure a permanent stabilizing link. Orion smiled. Then let's begin. They proceeded along a winding path beneath arching vines until they reached the first boundary node, an outcropping of crystalline roots forming a ring around a shallow pool. The Sentinel brood stood guard. With reverence, Elena removed a microcapsule, affixed it to a root filament, and pressed the harmonic emitter. A low hum filled the air, matching the 5-tone invocation. Instantly, the root ring pulsed in kind, and the Sentinel dog's glow brightened in waves. Node calibrated, Elena whispered. Network coherence up 57%. Encouraged, the team pressed onto Node 2, where the roots had formed a lattice bridge over a small ravine. Here, Marcos deployed a drone to map the subterranean currents. As Elena administered the peptide capsule, the drone's sensors flickered and then captured a series of faint voices in the bioluminescent network. Dr. Joe listened through her headset. I'm picking up microvocalizations, Sentinel speech patterns. They're chanting a greeting, unity of root and sky. She translated rapidly. They're acknowledging our covenant reinforcement. Orion's chest swelled with pride. Good work. 2 nodes down, 1 to go. The path to node 3 ascended toward a cliff face draped in hanging roots that glowed like lanterns. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but the grove beneath remained calm, its pulses steady. As Elena approached to place the final peptide capsule, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Leaves rattled overhead, and a cascade of fog rolled through the roots, obscuring the grove in shifting shadows. Seismic spike, Elena cried. Coordinates match the old DR. Vital breach site. Orion raised his arm. Everyone, stand by. From the mist emerged a massive root beast, 6 meters tall, its tendrils thicker than Orion's torso and its bark armor pitted with glowing runes. It moved with surprising grace, each footfall triggering ripples of light through the fungal carpet. The sentinel brood recoiled in fear and reverence. This was the guardian of the Veil, an apex sentinel, seldom seen since the Covenant's founding. Orion swallowed. Do not fire. We're still under the Covenant. He tapped his belt, and Elena activated the emitter at maximum range, broadcasting the 5-tone melody with full peptide infusion. The grove pulsed in response, and the Guardian halted, its runes shifting to display the same 5-tone spectral pattern. DR. Joe's eyes widened. It's harmonizing with us. It's accepting the offering. As the Guardian lowered a massive vine arm, it gently brushed the final capsule into place. A brilliant flash of bioluminescence flooded the ravine, and the sentinel brood surged forward in joyous affirmation. The Guardian's deep, resonant voice transmitted through Jax's translators reverberated in each mind. Covenant renewed. Balance restored. Orion exhaled, feeling the weight of centuries lift. We've done it. Later, back aboard the Remora, Orion debriefed Admiral Cray via secure link. Admiral, the Covenant nodes are fully synchronized. The peptide offerings have re-established stable harmonic bonds at every boundary. Sentinel cohorts confirm that Dawn's ecosystem will regulate future updates through our sanctioned channels. The Admiral's holographic form nodded gravely. Excellent. This level of cooperation sets a new precedent for human-alien symbiosis. Ensure the peptide synthesis protocols are archived in the Coalition's treaty vault. No modifications without unanimous Council approval. Understood, Orion replied. And we'll continue deep space monitoring for any unintended side effects. As the link closed, Commander Hayes approached. Captain, Dr. Joe's linguistic team suggests that the Guardian's speech pattern contains an open invitation and offer of deeper collaboration. They're encoding an algorithm for cross-species communication. Elena smiled tiredly. We've only just scratched the surface. Orion looked out at Dawn's glowing clouds. Then our next mission is clear, we return to the living cathedral and learn its true language. The Covenant demands not only respect, but dialogue. And I intend to listen. Beneath green storms and shimmering roots, human and alien hearts beat as one, bound by harmonies older than any star. The journey had only just begun. Captain Orion Vale stood at the edge of the Great Root Cathedral's inner sanctum, the colossal pillars of living wood rising like vaulted arches overhead. Every surface glowed faintly with bioluminescent tendrils, weaving a tapestry of emerald and violet light that pulsed in gentle unison. The rhythmic heartbeat of dawn's biosphere reverberated through his boots, a deep thrum that spoke of ancient intelligence and hidden knowledge. Beside him, Dr. Anika Cho adjusted her linguistic interface, keen to capture the Guardian's deeper dialect. Dr. Elena Maris and Commander Leela Hayes formed a protective ring, while Lieutenant Marcos Ridley and 2 drone pilots stayed alert for any sudden shifts in the Grove's mood. Elena, how stable are our peptide emitters? Orion asked quietly. Elena checked her wrist display. Holding at 98% efficiency. The peptide matrix remains synchronized with the Grove's baseline frequencies. No signs of destabilization since the last node infusion. Good. Orion turned to Anika. Any progress on decoding the Guardian's invitation? Anika nodded, eyes bright behind her visor. The Guardian's vocal harmonics, when translated into spectral data, overlay perfectly with the Sentinel brood's root messages, but there's an underlying layer I can't fully parse yet. It's as if each phrase contains multiple nested meanings, like a palimpsest of ecological memory. Orion raised an eyebrow. Sounds like we need to listen more carefully. Let's start recording. He motioned to the drone pilots. Deploy the hollow recorders in a semicircle around the central root nexus. Capture audio, luminescent patterns, and microvibrations. Let's treat this like the most critical archival expedition in human history. As the drones settled, their sensors illuminated thousands of tiny root fibers overhead, each flickering in perfect synchronization. The Guardian stepped forward, its bark armor gently creaking, and raised one thick tendril toward the air. A low, resonant hum drifted from its core, deep and melodic, carrying undertones of ancient sorrow and hopeful yearning all at once. Anika activated her interface. The air filled with translucent glyphs fluid, branching characters that pulsed in time with the hum. She began speaking the transliteration aloud. Seekers of distant sky, we beseech your voice in return. Open the codex of your memory, unroll the scroll of your kind. Share with us the chronicle of your stone cities, the rhythm of your elemental forges, the tapestry of your stars and your histories. Orion felt a chill of wonder. They want our stories, our cultural archives, in exchange for theirs. Elena's brow furrowed. This is more than a scientific exchange. It's a cultural reciprocity. They value narrative, memory, shared meaning. They've woven their biosphere into a library of light and life. Leela placed a hand on Orion's arm. Captain, we need to decide what to share. Our ship logs, our coalition's histories, even the myths of Earth. This isn't just data, it's our identity. Orion inhaled deeply, gazing up at the glowing arches. We came seeking a compound to extend life. Now we realize life itself is a story. We owe them our stories if we want their library. He turned to the team. Record every word. Then let's craft a response. They set to work at the foot of the root nexus. The hollow recorders captured the Guardian's every pulse and glyph. Meanwhile, Anika fed Orion's voice into her interface. Guardians of the living web, we bring the echoes of our world. We speak of oceans that cradle dawn's first light. Of mountains that cradle winds older than memory. Of cities built in aspiration and the quiet ache of time. We offer you our songs, our stories of unity and discord. Our laughter, our tears, our triumphs, our regrets. In return, teach us the language of your roots. The architecture of your silence. The map of your world beneath the soil. As Orion spoke, Anika's interface translated each phrase into harmonics that the grove responded to, bursts of violet light, ripples in the fungal carpet, and a soft crescendo in the surrounding pillars. The sentinel brood slowly closed around them in a protective quarter circle, their chameleon skins shifting fluid patterns that mirrored the human glyphs. Then the Guardian released a final sequence, a soaring cadence filled with layered undertones of gratitude and expectation. Anika's console transcribed. The covenant endures when voices mingle. We accept the tapestry you lay before us. Let memory bloom like petals in endless spring. In turn, we grant you the key to our root library. Teach your ship's core to sing our harmonies. Embed them in your archives halls, so that your future may walk in harmony with ours. Elena's eyes glowed with tears. They've offered us the root library's code and interface for future communication directly through our ship's databanks. Orion bowed his head in solemn respect. We will honor this gift. We'll integrate the Grove protocol into our core systems, and ensure that every generation understands this living alliance. Leela stepped forward. Captain, I'll coordinate with Chief Engineer Norin to write the Grove protocol into the Remera's neural net. It'll act as both translation matrix and cultural repository. Orion smiled. Excellent. And I'll prepare the cultural archives, a curated collection of human myths, histories, and art encoded as narrative harmonics. He turned back to the glowing pillars. Guardians of Dawn, our stories are yours as yours are ours. May this be the first of many shared tales. The Guardian's final pulse echoed like a blessing. The sentinel brood's light surged in joyous rhythm, sending waves of resonance through the cathedral. Dawn's heartbeat, once hidden in the soil, now joined the song of humanity across the void. As they departed back to the Phoenix, Orion glanced up at the vaulting arches one last time. He felt the weight and wonder of an alliance forged in mutual respect, bound by stories and living light. The living cathedral's whispered library would guide them onward, an eternal dialogue between skyborne explorers and the ancient planet whose voice would now echo in human memory forever. Captain Orion Vale reclined in the Remera's archives chamber, watching as the Grove protocol's hollow interface shimmered to life. Across the curved digital walls, Streams of emerald glyphs, translations of sentinel root language, flowed in mesmerizing patterns. Each glyph pulsed in time with dawn's planetary heartbeat, now encoded into the ship's neural fabric. As the final lines of the Guardian's Covenant scrolled past, Orion felt the weight of two worlds converging, humanity's boundless curiosity, and an alien biosphere older than any recorded star. "Captain," came Dr. Anika Joe's soft voice. She stood beside him, tablet in hand, eyes bright with excitement. "The first phase of protocol integration is complete. We can now query the root library directly from any console. Would you like to see?" Orion nodded. "Show me the first root codex." Anika keyed a command. The holographic floor erupted in rippling vines and branching nodes, assembling into a three-dimensional map of memory clusters. At its center glowed the root codex of Dawn, an immense, living tome woven from bioluminescent strands. Orion stepped onto the platform and reached out. As his gloved finger brushed the glowing page, a soft voice filled the chamber. The Guardian's harmonics rendered perfectly through the ship's speakers, carrying the warmth of alien insight. "Memory blooms in living light. We've etched our long nights beneath stone moons, our triumphs beneath thunder, our griefs beneath green skies. Open this archive, traveler, and learn the pulse of our world." Orion felt a thrill. He pressed forward to the next cluster, Chronicle of the Great Bloom, a record of Dawn's own history, encoded not in text but in resonant waves. Through his headset, he sensed the slow unfolding of time, ancient spores spreading across primordial soil, sentinel creatures emerging in symbiosis, the rise and fall of storm epochs that shaped the planet's soul. The archive played these memories as light and vibration, a sensory tapestry that no human library could match. "Elena," he called. "Dr." Elena Maris drifted in, clutching her data pad. "Look at this." He pointed to a node labeled Symbiotic Emergence. As they approached, the chamber lights dimmed and the archive's glow intensified, bathing them in shifting hues. Elena's eyes shone. This is at the moment when sentinel roots first bonded with Hypno's analog species, before humans ever arrived. Their DNA, their sentinel lectins, even their first harmonic language, they're all here. She tapped her pad. "If we study this, we can understand the fundamental laws of root symbiosis, how to create stable partnerships without side effects." Marcos Ridley strode in, rifle slung but eyes curious. "Captain, while you're reliving ancient biohistory, the crew's asking when we start using Hypno 7 for deep space test subjects. We promised Dawn that we'd regulate harvest. How do we balance service to humanity and respect for the Covenant?" Orion straightened. "The archives will guide us. We will establish strict quotas based on sentinel yield cycles. We learn from their Great Bloom cycle, only harvest during the sentinel's natural regenerative phase, as the archive instructs. And we'll monitor biosphere health remotely, sending data back each cycle." Marcos nodded. "Understood. I'll prepare the protocols." Anika interrupted with a thoughtful frown. Captain, I've discovered another root codex in the archives, one labeled Whispers of the Future. It's incomplete, as if the Sentinel Network wrote a prophecy and left us the final verses. We'll need to unlock that sequence to fully synchronize our joint future. Orion's heart quickened. Then that's our next quest. But first, we need to share a human story in return. He turned to Elena. Write a harmonic narrative, our tale, from Earth's dawn to this moment. Let the Sentinel hear our heartbeat too. Elena smiled. I'll begin composing immediately, an archive of human hope woven in resonant patterns. That evening, the crew gathered in the archives chamber for the first joint storytelling session. Orion stood at the central dais, Anika and Elena flanking him. All around, officers and xenobiologists, engineers, and security personnel watched the networked hollow screens. The air hummed lightly as the Sentinel archive awaited humanity's offering. Orion began, voice steady and clear. We come from a world of seas and mountains, where dawn's first light danced upon oceans wide. We built our cities in the cradle of dreams, sang songs beneath the vault of countless stars. We fell and rose, our triumphs and our tears, etched like constellations in memory's sky. This is our story of courage and of hope, offered now in humble song to dawn's embrace. As he spoke, Anika's interface translated his words into layered harmonics. Elena released the melody through the ship's frequency modulators. The records of dawn responded instantly, glowing glyphs blossomed across the vine net, and the root codex of memoirs of the Skyborn expanded to receive humanity's verses. A tender luminescence spread through the archive, the Sentinel brood's chameleon skins flickering in acceptance. The Guardian's deep resonant voice returned. Your song joins ours in living memory. By sharing your dawn, you anchor our night. Together we walk between root and sky, each pulse a testament to unity. Elated applause echoed among the gathered crew. For a moment, species lines melted away, human and sentinel, ship, and planet, all part of a single living story. Later, alone in the quiet of the chamber, Orion traced a finger through the air, pulling up the Whispers of the Future codex. The spectral glyphs hovered in fragmented phrases. When the Skyborn kin seek new worlds, our roots will guide their journey. When storms of change darken the suns, our voices will light their path. But heed this last refrain. Hearts unbound by reciprocity shall find their memory unraveled. We are many, but we are one. Orion paused, contemplating the prophecy's warning. Reciprocity, true mutual respect, had to endure. Only by honoring each gift, each story, each moment of trust, could humanity and dawn walk forward together. He activated his comm. Commander Hayes, draft a permanent archive treaty based on today's exchange. Include great bloom harvest cycles, cultural sharing protocols, and strict covenant enforcement measures. Yes, Captain, she replied, her tone respectful. Orion turned back to the incomplete prophecy. Elena, Anika, our future codex awaits your verses. Let's write the final refrain together. As the Remor's corridor lights dimmed outside, the archives chamber glowed with living memory, a testament to two civilizations intertwined. Dawn's whispered library and humanity's skyborn tales now coalesced into a single narrative, one that would guide both worlds through storms yet unseen. Captain Orion Vale stood on the observation deck of the Remora, gazing out at the jewel-green swirl of dawn below. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see the twin shuttles Phoenix and Aurora gliding into position, each carrying a delicate cargo of Hypno-7 wafers destined for the ship's medical bay. Today marked the culmination of months of careful negotiation, research, and covenant renewal, the first human trials of the legendary sleep enzyme. Morning report, Commander Leela Hayes said, joining him with 2 steaming cups of synthesized coffee. Her tone was brisk, but her eyes betrayed excitement. All systems are go. Wafers have passed final purity assays. Bioreactor cycles are within specified parameters. Medical team and volunteer cohort are prepped in Lab Gamma 5. Orion took a sip of coffee, savored its warm familiarity, then set the cup aside. Thank you, Commander. Activate the secure comm with Dr. Selene Rojas in the medical bay. Let's begin. In Lab Gamma 5, Dr. Selene Rojas paced beside a curved array of sleep pods. 5 volunteer crew members selected for their physical health, psychological resilience, and willingness to comply with extended monitoring lay motionless inside translucent chambers. Each pod was lined with bioluminescent filaments emitting gentle pulses calibrated to the Grove protocol frequencies, designed to hush neural activity into a restful rhythm. Orion and Elena Maris entered, flanked by Leela and Lieutenant Marcos Ridley. Dr. Rojas greeted them with a nod. Captain, we've run one final check. Vital signs are stable. EEG readings show baseline cortical rhythms. We're ready to administer the Hypno-7 wafers. Elena held a silver case. Inside, 5 slender wafers glowed with faint violet luminescence, the concentrated extract of Dawn's covenant blossoms, stabilized by sentinel lectin motifs. She slipped each wafer into a nutrient cartridge on the pod's interior console. Remember, she said, voice soft with reverence, these wafers are engineered to mimic the finite dosing cycles we harvested during Dawn's Great Bloom regenerative phase. We must adhere strictly to the dosing schedule, no overrides, no accelerations. The Covenant requires balance. Orion placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. Understood. Let's begin. At Dr. Rojas's signal, the pods hissed softly, sealing shut. Nutrient cartridges released their contents, and the wafers dissolved into a milky solution that drifted like motes of light through the chambers. Across Gamma 5, screens displayed each volunteer's vital metrics in real time: heart rate, blood oxygen, EEG harmonics, hormone levels. Within minutes, the pod's bioluminescent filaments synchronized with each pod's internal dosing cycle. Outside, Jack's NIRI monitored the integrated data stream, cross-referencing it with the Grove protocol's harmonics. Phase 1 dosing complete, Jax announced. Sleep induction metrics within expected parameters. Volunteers exhibit stable delta wave increases. No adverse neurochemical spikes detected. A collective sigh of relief swept through the team. Orion allowed himself a small smile. Good work. Let's maintain Phase 2 life cycle monitoring for the next 12 hours. After that, we'll begin the controlled wake cycle. As they exited the lab, Elena lingered by the pods. I'll stay to oversee the next cycle, she said. We need continuous analysis of sentinel peptide resonance to ensure long-term protein stability. Orion nodded. Thank you. Commander Hayes, I'll leave the medical protocols in your hands while I prepare the real-time Covenant update for Dawn. Leela saluted. Understood, Captain. May your frequencies remain true. Alone on the observation deck, Orion activated the ship-to-planet uplink. A shimmering window of emerald light coalesced into the root cathedral interface. The Sentinel glyphs unfurled, ready to receive the day's events, a Covenant log of human trials. He spoke into the hollow microphone, choosing his words with care. Guardians of the Living Cathedral, this is Captain Orion Vale of the Remora. At your Covenant's dawn, we have administered the first human trials of Hypno 7 under regulated dosing cycles as agreed. 5 volunteers have entered deep sleep and are exhibiting healthy neural rhythms consistent with your Great Bloom's harmonic signature. We await the molecule's long-term metabolite feedback and will honor the cycle's completion before inducing wakefulness. We offer this report in trust and gratitude. May your roots remain ever strong, and our shared future flourish beneath your care. As he finished, the glyphs flickered, then a new layer of response glowed into being. Skyborn travelers, your trial is heard. Sleep as we sleep together in living memory. We watch your hearts, your breath is ours. May your dawn awaken in harmony. A soft pulse of bioluminescence rippled through the projection. Orion allowed himself a moment of wonder. Humanity and Dawn were now entwined not only by chemistry and treaty, but by mutual experience of rest, a shared trust in vulnerability. Back in Lab Gamma 5 12 hours later, the monitors beeped in unison, Phase 2 Schism. Dr. Rojas initiated the wake protocol. The pod's internal filaments eased from glimmering violet to gentle blue. Nutrient cartridges released a revitalizing saline infusion. Inside, the volunteers stirred. One by one, the lids of the pods opened. The first volunteer, Engineer Kai Tanaka, blinked against the soft light. He sat up, breath deep, eyes clearing as he processed the transition. I feel like I've woken from a dream inside a star, he murmured. The second volunteer, biologist Cashin Wen, smiled. No grogginess. I'm calm. Energized, even. As each volunteer emerged, Orion and Dr. Rojas greeted them. Vital signs were red, heart rate steady, endocrine markers within predicted thresholds, elevated but safe levels of restorative hormones. Elena entered, data pad in hand. Preliminary results are excellent. Hypno 7 delivered a full 12-hour sleep cycle with rapid recovery and no apparent side effects. Metabolite profiles show balanced lectin cleavage products are synthesized analogs held firm. Orion exhaled, relief mingling with triumph. This is the milestone we've worked for. Document these findings, and prepare a detailed summary for the Coalition Council. Marcos Ridley approached, shaking Kai's hand. Glad to see you back on your feet, Kai. How's the mind? Kai grinned. Sharper than ever. I feel, purpose renewed. Ready for the next shift. As the team celebrated, an urgent chime sounded on Orion's wrist console. He tapped it. A new sentinel glyph appeared, an addendum to the Covenant log. Renewed trust blossoms in shared rest. Beware the edge of wakeful ambition. For every gift bears the weight of choice. Sleep again only when harmony calls. Orion's smile dimmed. Even in success, Dawn reminded them of balance. They had unlocked profound capability, yet with each gift came responsibility and the need for self-restraint. He turned to Elena. We'll schedule the next cycle only after thorough review. Let's honor their warning. Elena nodded. Agreed. We'll proceed with humility. Orion looked at the glow of the sentinel glyphs. Humanity had taken its first true step into the Covenant's heart. The trials beneath the stars succeeded, but they would live forever under Dawn's vigilant watch, sleeping and waking in harmony, bound by the living cathedral's whispered library, forging a future. Written in light and rest. Captain Orion Vale paced the length of the Remera's central passageway, his mind alight with the Guardian's final admonition, hearts unbound by reciprocity shall find their memory unraveled. 12 human sleep cycles had passed since the inaugural Hypno 7 trials, and the crew's spirits were high, but Dawn's prophecy still hovered in every corridor. In the adjoining council chamber, Dr. Anika Joe and Commander Leela Hayes waited beside a hollow projection of the incomplete Whispers of the Future Codex. Tendrils of emerald light danced around the floating glyph fragments, hinting at the missing verses that would reveal Dawn's hidden agenda. Elena's analysis suggests the codex fragments correspond to a future seed cycle, Anika explained. They reference an event beyond our current timeline when Skyborn seek new worlds, but the final refrain is garbled. We need to recover it in situ, at the root life cycle's next bloom. Leela frowned. That won't occur for another 60 local days. By then, our next scheduled trial will be underway. Orion joined them, hands clasped behind his back. Then we go back sooner. We'll launch a long-duration expedition to the living cathedral to observe the bloom's early signals. We need to witness the Codex's completion firsthand. Anika's eyes brightened. The root cathedral's core will carry the full whisper sequence. But we must move discreetly. The sentinel brood's protective protocols might interpret our approach as interference if we're not careful. Leela tapped her data pad. I'll update the flight plan for silent approach, no thruster flares, minimal comms. And we'll send only a small reconnaissance team. Orion nodded. I'll join this mission personally. Elena, Marcos, and Jax will accompany us. Prepare the Phoenix for a 48-hour surface rotation. We depart in 2 hours. Under the muted glow of standby lights, the landing bay was a hive of activity. Captain Vale and his team Dr. Elena Maris, Lieutenant Marcos Ridley, Dr. Anika Joe, and Jax Neary boarded the Phoenix along with 2 drone operators. The shuttle's bioluminescent exterior panels dimmed to near transparency as it slid into position. As the Remor's airlock sealed, Orion gave one last nod to Commander Hayes. Trust the Covenant will hold. She offered a steady smile. May dawn guide you. The Phoenix slipped into space, ghosting toward dawn's swirling cloud cover. Breaching the bolonite layer, it descended in near silence, guided by Anika's precise navigational codes. Below, the vast expanse of glowing root pillars stretched like an alien forest cathedral. Steady, 15 meters, Elena whispered, scanning the ground sensors. Soil bioindicators are within safe thresholds. Orion exhaled. Touchdown. They disembarked onto a platform of living roots woven into a natural helipad. The air thrummed with bioluminescent pulses. Each breath felt charged with potential and trepidation. Anika consulted her tablet. The prophecy's missing line should manifest within the next bloom cycle. We need to synchronize our holocapturers with the cathedral's core. She activated a handheld resonator. Let's go. They advanced along an elevated route walkway, following a path of faint violet light. Jax's drones flitted overhead, streaming spectral data. After half an hour, they reached a vast chamber where dozens of sentinel brood circled a central root pillar crowned with burgeoning bud, signs of the early bloom. Elena, collect environmental scans, Orion instructed softly. Anika, prepare the resonance array. As Elena deployed microsamplers, the sentinel brood observed in respectful silence. Suddenly, the buds along the central pillar burst into radiant bloom, casting living glyphs into the airwaves of beauty and raw power. Anika's array captured the harmonics, her eyes widened as the final verse of the codex unfurled in glowing script. In unity of question and answer. Our roots shall entwine with your destinies. Through shared echoes and honest tears. Tomorrow's covenant is bound by trust. The chamber pulsed with a surge of bioluminescence, and the sentinel brood emitted a chorus of soft clicking harmonics. Jax translated, they have completed the prophecy. They pledge reciprocal stewardship of tomorrow, our futures are now entwined. Orion felt a swell of emotion. We've heard the final verse. Record it in the Grove Protocol and the Council's archives. Elena smiled through tears. Truth and trust, two sides of the same root. A sudden tremor rattled the chamber as a new cluster of buds opened around the base of the pillar. Dawn's living cathedral was alive with renewal, an apt metaphor for the shared destiny they had forged. Marcos exhaled. Captain, the drone feeds show a localized energy spike, possible unanticipated biofield resonance. Orion frowned. Could be a security mechanism testing our fidelity to the Covenant. Jax, analyze for threat patterns. Jax's optic arrays shimmered. No aggression detected. The resonance spike appears to be a stabilizing force, reinforcing the cathedral's network after the prophecy's fulfillment. Orion relaxed. Then let us witness the cycle. We came for knowledge and we've found it. Let's honor Dawn by returning immediately to the Remora and integrating the prophecy into our shared future. Back aboard the Remora, the newly completed Whispers of the Future sequence was woven into the Grove Protocol. Admiral Cray's hologram approved its codification into the Coalition Charter under the banner Covenant of Shared Tomorrow. As Captain Orion Vale signed the final digital treaty, he reflected on their journey, from the search for a miracle enzyme to the forging of a living alliance. Tomorrow and the centuries beyond depended on the promise of trust they had sealed beneath alien skies. And as Dawn's green storms raged below, humanity and the Sentinel roots began a new era, bound by echoes of yesterday and whispers of tomorrow. Captain Orion Vale stood at the bow of the Remora's shuttle bay, watching as the green restoration drone's sleek, vine-wrapped quadrotors glided into the dusk-lit hangar. Below, the newly codified Covenant of Shared Tomorrow gleamed on every console, a living treaty honored by both human and Sentinel roots. Today's mission would test that covenant in action, to heal a scarred region of Dawn's rainforest devastated by last season's lightning superstorm. Dr. Elena Maris joined him, her eyes bright with determination. The Sentinel archives identified the stalwart Grove's southern quadrant as most severely destabilized, root network severed, hypnosubstrata depleted. Our restoration drones carry micro-infusions of Sentinel lectin analogs and early growth saplings from the living cathedral. She tapped her comm. All systems green. Orion nodded. Excellent. Commander Hayes and Lieutenant Ridley will lead the ground party. I'll oversee from the Phoenix's command deck alongside Jax and Dr. Joe. Let's demonstrate that reciprocity isn't just words on a hollow step, it's our actions. Under Dawn's emerald sky, the Phoenix touched down on a moss-covered plateau overlooking the devastated grove. Dozens of massive trees lay uprooted, their bioluminescent veins dimmed to dying embers. The air still crackled with residual bolonite static, a reminder of the storm's fury. Commander Leela Hayes stepped onto the forest floor. Captain's orders: deploy the restoration drones in concentric rings, starting at the outer canopy and working inward. Activate harmonic emitters at each staging point to guide root regrowth. She raised her voice above the hush of ruined leaves. Let's get to work. Lieutenant Ridley launched the first wave of drones. They hovered like mechanical hummingbirds, each drone seeding precise doses of lectin-infused nutrient capsules into the broken root network. As the capsules dissolved, violet pulses rippled along exposed bark, awakening dormant root hairs. Dr. Anika Jo knelt to inspect a nearby stump. "The sentinel brood prepared us for this," she murmured. They recorded a renewal cadence in the cathedral, 38 beats per minute, with harmonic overtones in the 12 to 16 Hz band. "If we modulate the emitters to that frequency, root regeneration will accelerate." Nearby, 4 sentinel guardians emerged from the undergrowth, their bark armor modeled from the storm's debris. They observed in silent vigilance as humans and machines worked side by side. One giant sentinel extended a gentle tendril to tap the emitter's control panel, verifying the frequency. The emitters hummed in response, and the ruined grove came alive in waves of soft green light. Back aboard the Phoenix, Orion monitored the telemetry. Root integrity metrics climbing at 0.7% per minute exceeds projected rates by tenfold, Jax reported. Its synthetic voice carried a hint of awe. Hydraulic growth within standard deviation. Hypnose precursor levels stabilizing. Elena smiled. "That's the power of shared stewardship, our science amplified by the root network's living intelligence." She replayed the live stream. Tiny shoots sprouted from the stumps, coating the blackened soil in bioluminescent moss. Suddenly, the forest floor shivered in a concentric pulse, a seismic echo that rippled through every root. The restoration drones hovered in perfect synchronization, their lights flickering in unison. Then, one by one, the sentinel guardians stepped forward, placing buds fresh hypnose saplings into each healed root cluster. Dr. Joe's eyes welled with tears. "They're completing the cycle, planting the seeds of our next harvest." Orion felt a surge of pride. "Broadcast this to the Remora, let every crew member witness the Covenant's living heartbeat." He tapped his comm. "Hayes, tell the rest of the crew they're invited to the Grove's renewal ceremony tonight." As dusk deepened into Belanite Street night, the stalwart grove glowed with newfound life. Crew members gathered among the sentinel brood, forming a silent circle around the central clearing. Orion stepped forward and addressed both human and sentinel. "Tonight, we honor the Covenant in action. You shared your harmonic root code, we shared our hands and hearts. Together, we have healed what was broken, and in doing so, have strengthened the bond between sky and root." He gestured to Elena, who released a final sequence of harmonic tones. The bioluminescent pillars pulsed in harmony with the drone-lit saplings, sending waves of soft green across the assembly. The sentinel guardians responded with a radiant cascade of light and unspoken benediction. Orion closed his eyes and whispered, "May every scar become a seed, every trial a testament to trust." A single sentinel tendril brushed against his shoulder in a gesture of shared solace. Around them, the restored grove hummed with promise, a living testament to reciprocity, woven from the fusion of human ingenuity and alien wisdom. As the Remora's crew and Dawn's guardians stood together beneath the glowing canopy, Captain Orion Vale knew their journey was far from over, but tonight, they had proven that true healing always begins with an open hand. The next morning, Captain Orion Vale awoke to an alert on his wrist console, Covenant alert: unusual bioluminescent pattern logged at Stalwart Grove. He straightened and tapped the screen. Below, a live feed from the Phoenix's external cameras showed the restored grove bathed in an otherworldly green glow far brighter and more intricate than the steady pulses of the previous night. "Commander Hayes," he whispered, hurrying to the shuttle bay's observation deck. "I want a full status on the grove's renewal metrics and a team ready to launch." Moments later, Commander Leela Hayes joined him, data pad in hand. "Captain, the Sentinel brood recorded a spontaneous bioluminescent surge at precisely 3:17 local time, coinciding with our renewal ceremony's final cadence. The pattern resembles the original root library glyphs but arranged in an entirely new sequence. It could be a message or an invitation." Orion's brow furrowed. "We pledged to listen. Prepare a small team, Elena, Anika, and 2 drone operators, and let's return immediately. We need to understand this new pattern before we proceed with any further trials or harvest." Under dawn's turquoise dawn sky, the Phoenix descended through the swirling bolonite mists. As its hull settled onto the living helipad, Orion felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. The grove's new glow was even more vivid close-up. Vines and trunks shimmered with threads of gold and silver light woven into the emerald pulsing. Dr. Elena Maris knelt to place her hand on the nearest root pillar. "These luminescent threads mimic Hypno-7 protein spectra," she murmured. "But they're arranged like lines of a song, an entirely new harmonic sequence." Dr. Anika Jo activated her translator array. "Let's see what the Sentinel network is singing now." They advanced into the grove's heart, following a carpet of bioluminescent moss that led them to a clearing ringed with living benches of interlaced roots. In the center, a massive Sentinel guardian unfurled its limbs in a gesture of welcome. Its bark armor glowed with a lattice of golden veins that pulsed in time with the light threads overhead. Anika raised her resonator. "Guardians of Dawn, we have returned to listen to your message." She triggered a soft series of harmonic tones, variations of the Covenant sequence introduced the previous evening. Instantly, the grove responded. The golden veins flared, and a chorus of tiny rootfish, the miniature bioluminescent creatures that skittered along the roots, emerged, their trails forming luminous glyphs on the mossy floor. The patterns coalesced into a spiral that slowly rotated, then suspended itself before the landing party like a floating rune. Elena's eyes widened as she peered at the translator readout. "Through renewal we grow, through reflection we see. The mirror of sky and root reveals our unity. But heed the looming tempest of choice unmade. Seek truth beneath thunder or in shadows fade." Orion's heart pounded. They speak of reflection and a looming tempest, perhaps a challenge or test we must face together. Commander Hayes, who had followed with drone feeds, called out, "Data shows atmospheric instability forming a supercell just west of the grove, stronger than any recorded in our meteorological archives. This is the tempest they warned of." Elena's voice trembled. "A storm tied to Covenant actions, our choices echo in Dawn's weather systems." We must decide, do we stand firm under the tempest to prove our unity, or retreat, and forsake this lesson? Orion steadied himself, feeling the weight of leadership. We honor the covenant by facing their trials alongside them. Let's ready the drones and our harmonic emitters to reinforce the grove's renewal sequence. Bring our reflection into the storm. As the supercell orbited above, the team deployed spike-shaped harmonic generators deep into the mossy soil. Each device released pulses that matched the Sentinel's new golden harmonic pattern. Rain began to lash the grove in violet-tinged sheets of acid-neutralized droplets, violent yet strangely melodic. Lightning forked across the green sky in prismatic arcs. The ground trembled with every thunderclap. Yet under the hail of bolonite rain, the grove's luminous veins flared brighter, and the golden threads spread outward, weaving a protective lattice that seemed to hold back the storm's fury. Elena monitored her instruments. Root strain levels are stable. The lattice is absorbing the storm's energy and converting it into resonance waves. Anika added, the Sentinel brood and our emitters are co-creating a shield proof of reciprocal trust. The tempest is forging our bond into something stronger. Orion gripped his cowl as thunder roared overhead. Hold the sequence. No faltering. They stood together, human and sentinel, shipborne warriors, and living forest guardians united by melody and purpose. Rain hammered their suits, but the grove's light never dimmed. Slowly, the supercell's fury spent itself, the lightning arcs grew pure, the thunder quieter, and the rain gentler until it subsided into a soft mist. In the hush that followed, the Sentinel Guardian extended a glowing tendril, touching Orion's shoulder in silent acknowledgement. Anika's interface rendered the final glyph of acceptance. Through storm and shadow, we walk as one. Our thunders shared, our paths begun. Reflection made real by trials endured. Trust, the seed by which futures are assured. Orion exhaled, rain dripping from his visor. We have proven our unity in the tempest's heart. Let's record this chapter in the Grove Protocol and return to the Remora with Dawn's blessing. Back aboard the Remora, the Central Covenant archive updated itself automatically. Admiral Cray's hollow portrait appeared with a rare smile. A storm trial remarkable. You have demonstrated that our alliance is resilient in both calm and chaos. The Coalition will honor this testament in every future endeavor. Orion nodded. The Covenant lives in our choices, in reflection and renewal, in bravery under thunder. And at every turn, we walk together. As the Remora charted its course for the next mission, Captain Vale gazed at Dawn's fading silhouette, its living roots still aglow with golden patterns of unity. He knew more storms and trials would come, but they would face them in harmony, rooted in trust and watered by shared resolve. Captain Orion Vale stepped onto the floor of the Remora's Grand Council chamber, its walls alive with shifting glyphs from Dawn's root library. Seated around the circular bench were representatives of the United Stellar Coalition, admirals, ambassadors, and legal delegates, each arrayed in attire denoting their home worlds. At Orion's side stood Commander Leela Hayes, Dr. Elena Maris, Dr. Anika Jo, and the android science officer Jax Argus Niari. Today's agenda: to present the results of the Covenant missions and secure formal ratification of the Covenant of Shared Tomorrow. As the chamber's ambient lights dimmed, Orion began. Esteemed delegates of the Coalition, we bring you greetings from Dawn, a world that taught us reciprocity in sleep, renewal, and storm. Through 15 episodes of shared trials, healing drones have restored scarred groves, Hypno 7 trials granted humanity new hope, and our voices joined in the living cathedral symphony. We now stand ready to propose formal adoption of the Covenant for all Coalition vessels and settlements. A holographic projection rose from the center dais, 3 intertwined circles of light representing humanity, Dawn's biosphere, and the Sentinel network. Around them, 16 codified articles of the Covenant glowed in rotating glyphs. Dr. Elena Maris stepped forward to present scientific findings. Article 4 establishes regulated Hypno 7 harvest cycles based on Dawn's Great Bloom data. Trials in Lab Gamma 5 proved safe 12-hour sleep inductions with rapid recovery. Restoration drones, for Article 9, have demonstrated 250% accelerated root regrowth in 3 test sectors. All procedures integrated Sentinel lectin analogs under strict ecological safeguards. She tapped her pad. The chamber screens displayed time-lapse footage of the stalwart grove's renewal, barren trunks sprouting buds, bioluminescent veins reigniting, Sentinel guardians weaving new root lattice bridges. Applause rippled through the delegates. Next, Dr. Anika Joe addressed the cultural exchange. Article 7 codifies the Joint Archive Protocol. Human narrative songs of Earth's seas, mountains, and the star-forged myth of Tiamat's rise now reside in Dawn's Root Codex. In return, Dawn's whispers of the future prophecy guides our shared destiny. Our first joint storytelling event marked humanity's integration into the living library. She cued a short hollow clip, Orion's voice echoing beneath Dawn's vaulting root arches, followed by the Guardian's resonant reply. The council murmured with wonder. Commander Hayes then explained security measures. Article 12 obligates all Covenant signatories to respect Sentinel network defenses. As Episode 14 demonstrated, we faced a tempest trial together. Our harmonic emitters sustained the grove under violent storms. Our drones and Sentinel guardians proved cooperative. Any violation of the Covenant triggers automatic quarantine and ecological lockdown of the target sector. A delegate from the Andromedan Alliance, Ambassador Cyril, rose with measured curiosity. Captain Vale, these articles are ambitious. But how do you ensure compliance across disparate worlds, especially those driven by profit or military imperatives? Hypno 7's potential for long-range hibernation could revolutionize warfare. How do we prevent exploitation? Orion met the ambassador's gaze. By codifying the Covenant at the highest coalition level. Articles I and II bind every member government by treaty, not merely by executive decree. Article 16 empowers the Coalition Ethics Tribunal to oversee Hypno 7 distribution. Only sanctioned medical, research, and exploration programs may apply for harvest permits. Military applications require unanimous council approval and active Sentinel network consent, as transmitted via the Grove Protocol. The tribunal's chairwoman, Judge Valeria Corinth, nodded thoughtfully. The protocol includes sentinel biometric signatures encoded in every Hypnos batch, correct? Any unauthorized alteration or forging of signatures would be instantly flagged by SentinelNet's distributed ledger. Dr. Maris confirmed, precisely. We integrated a quantum encrypted Sentinel hash into each microcapsule. SentinelNet will intercept and quarantine any invalid batches at origin. A murmur of approval ran through the assembly. Admiral Kuros of the Coalition Navy stood. Captain Vale, your team's accomplishments set a new standard. I move to adopt the Covenant of Shared Tomorrow as Coalition law. Several delegates seconded the motion, and the holographic glyphs surrounding the treaty projection glowed brighter. Judge Corinth tapped her gavel console, declaring, "Motion carried unanimously. The Covenant of Shared Tomorrow is hereby ratified. May its living articles guide our union with Dawn and all biospheres we encounter." A flourish of holographic fireworks, emerald, violet, and gold erupted around the council chamber. Orion allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. He turned to his team. We did it. 15 episodes to forge an alliance worthy of eternity. Commander Hayes clapped him on the shoulder. And tomorrow, we carry this living treaty into the stars. Dr. Joe leaned in, eyes alight. Next up, translating the Sentinel Root Codex into Universal Coalition Standard. Then perhaps, exploring the next world whose roots await our listeners' hearts. Jack's Argus Neary's synthetic voice chimed through the chamber speakers, the first time an android had addressed the council, directive approved. Initiating coalition-wide protocol distribution. May the roots of tomorrow grow strong in every corner of the galaxy. Orion bowed his head in gratitude. To Dawn, to humanity, to the covenant we share. Our journey continues rooted in trust, reaching for every star. Under the chamber's mosaics of living glyphs, the covenant of shared tomorrow became reality. And as the Remora drifted from Dawn's orbit into the starlit path beyond, Captain Orion Vale gazed at the green and gold planet below, knowing that two worlds once strangers now pulsed together in harmony, ready to face whatever wonders and challenges awaited on the next horizon. Captain Orion Vale stood on the Phoenix's command deck, staring through the wide viewport as the Remora slipped free of Dawn's orbit. Behind him, the holographic glyphs of the Covenant of Shared Tomorrow still rippled softly along the chamber walls. Ahead lay the long voyage to Hesperus, an uncharted planet whose strange coral deserts and crystalline winds promised new discoveries. But first, the crew would undertake their most ambitious trial yet, deep space hibernation guided by the Sentinel Root Codex, a test of interstellar bond and human resilience. Dr. Elena Maris joined him, data pad in hand. Captain, the Hypnos 7 dosing schedule for a 60-day sleep cycle is loaded into each pod's neural interface. We've integrated Sentinel harmonic subroutines to preserve the root language resonance through the sleep state. This isn't just hibernation, it's a rooted dream expedition. Orion nodded, swallowing excitement and a flicker of unease. Understood. We trust Dawn's living protocol. Notify the medical team, volunteers' final vitals check in 1 hour. Then commence sleep induction. In Lab Gamma 7, 5 volunteer crew members reclined inside cocoon-shaped hypersleep chambers. Around them, racks of bioluminescent vessels glowed in sentinel hues, emerald greens, violet undertones, and soft golden threads. Dr. Selene Rojas monitored the final EEG baselines as Captain Vale stepped beside her. Phase 0 complete, she reported. Baseline neural patterns synchronized with sentinel codices. Once we trigger the doses, their dreams will be seeded with root language harmonics. Orion placed a hand on the nearest pod's surface. May your rest be a dialogue with Dawn's memory. He tapped his comm. Begin infusion. Soft hissing sounds filled the lab as each chamber sealed. Nutrient-rich droplets descended, dissolving Hypno 7 wafers into the dream matrix. The cocoon lights pulsed in an ascending scale, first emerald, then violet, then gold, mirroring the living cathedral's harmonic triad. Outside, Jax, Neary and Elena watched the monitors, eyes fixed on the EEG-driven dream resonance graphs. Delta wave amplitude rising, Jax intoned. But there's an overlay of theta band pulses at 5. 2 Hz, matching sentinel codex patterns classified in episode 10. Its synthetic voice carried wonder. Volunteers entering a shared dream field. Elena exhaled. They'll dream together, guided by Dawn's living memory. Prepare the dream capture nodes, we need to record and translate their joint visions. In the Phoenix's holodeck conversion lounge, an array of holo projectors hummed to life. Dr. Anika Joe and 2 dream engineers calibrated the root resonance interface, a device designed to translate subconscious root language symbols into visual patterns. As the first crew member, biologist Cashin Wen, drifted deep, her dream signals appeared on the central holo screen, a forest of living glyphs, each flickering like fireflies in a midnight grove. Before Anika could interpret, the second volunteer engineer Kai Tanaka entered the same dreamscape. Their mental projections intertwined, Kash's forest rippled as Kai's voice softly narrated Earth legends of ocean tides, merging with alien glyphs. The holo screen shifted to show crystalline petals unfolding overhead, each petal etched with both Earth runes and sentinel symbols. Look at that fusion, Anika whispered. They're weaving human myth into Dawn's memory tree. She captured a sequence, a giant root trunk inscribed with the silhouette of Earth's mountains, its bark veined with sentinel light. Moments later, the third volunteer medic Lieutenant Zora Patel joined them, her dream avatar kneeling beside the root trunk, pouring a vial of human seed into its bark. The seed glowed, sprouting new glyph petals that drifted skyward, each one carrying a story fragment, a child's lullaby, a scholar's first lecture, a warrior's vow. Anika's eyes brimmed as she recorded the shared tableau. They're offering human memory back to Dawn in their dreams, true reciprocity of art and life. Days passed as the volunteers slept. Every 24 hours, the dream engineers extracted visual tapestries of their shared visions, interpreting them through the root resonance interface. The patterns grew more complex, labyrinthine root cities, starlit blossoms that sang with human choral hymns, and an ever-deepening dialogue between ancestral earth myths and Dawn's sentinel chronicle. On day 30, an alarm sounded, a storm front forming at Dawn's equator, but this time, mapped onto the Remor's hyperspace trajectory. Sensors indicated a bolonite cloud pattern emerging in the ship's temporal wake, as if Dawn's living memory had seeped into the warp field itself. Jax's display showed ghostly emerald rifts twisting through space around the ship. "Captain," Elena reported, eyes wide, "the Sentinel network is projecting its memory storm patterns into our trajectory. They want us to experience the living cathedral's tempest while dream-seated. It's another trial." Orion swallowed. "They're testing our unity again across space and time. Prepare the Phoenix for remote observation, we can't wake the volunteers. We must weather this memory storm in their stead." Clad in resonance-shielded suits, Orion, Elena, Anika, and Jax piloted the Phoenix along the edge of the bolonite cloud maelstrom. Lightning forks of emerald and violet braided through the swirling storm, and thunder crackled as if replaying echoes from Dawn's real tempest. Their harmony emitters activated, matching the Dreamer's codex patterns to stabilize the ship's hull resonance. Elena monitored the storm's intensity. Hull oscillations at 1.2 Hz above baseline, but our emitters are holding at 0.98 resonance factor. We can make it through. Anika closed her eyes, fingertips brushing the console. She whispered an invocation, a fused human sentinel melody drawn from the volunteers' dream tapestries. The storm's lightning pulses synchronized, then receded into gentle emerald flares. The bolonite clouds parted, revealing the inky void beyond. Orion exhaled. "We've passed the dream storm. Let's head back to the Remora and prepare to awaken our volunteers." When they returned to Lab Gamma 7, the volunteers stirred under the hybrid dream shift. One by one, the pods hissed open. Each awakened crew member looked at the others, eyes bright with wonder, as though they had shared more than 50 dreams. They had shared a living legacy. Cassian Wen spoke first. "I saw Earth's oceans converge with Dawn's root oceans. The waves were made of glyphs and song." Kai Tanaka added, "I felt Dawn's storms in my blood and our voices singing to steady its heart." Zora Patel smiled softly. "We offered our stories, and they offered theirs through lightning and roots." Orion placed a hand on each pod. "You lived the covenant in dreams, forging the deepest bond possible. Welcome back, Dreamweavers." Elena reviewed the dream records. The dream files contain new Sentinel human hybrid codices patterns for deeper ecological interfacing. We'll translate and integrate them into the root codex and our archives. Jax's optics glowed. Preliminary analysis suggests the dream-derived codices will expand the Grove protocol beyond hypersleep into active psychosomatic resonance for future expeditions. Orion allowed himself a smile. "We sought to test deep space hibernation, we discovered a bridge between mind and root. The The covenant lives not only in action, but in the dreams we share. That evening, aboard the Remera's observation deck, Captain Vale stood before the newly updated route codex projection. Beneath it glowed the volunteers' dream-derived glyphs, a swirling tapestry of human and sentinel memory, now inseparable. He whispered, "Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, my friends." And as the Remera set course for Hesperus, its crew carried with them a deeper truth, that in the nightly realm of dream, the roots of two worlds had joined, and their shared imagination would guide humanity to the next horizon, where new alliances and new wonders awaited beyond the veil of sleep. Captain Orion Vale stood on the Remera's command deck, the twin hollow viewports framing an expanse of starlit void. Dawn's emerald glow had receded behind them, its living roots and sentinel melodies now encoded into the ship's neural core. Ahead lay Hesperus, a world whispered about in coalition charts for its coral deserts, crystal winds, and rumors of an ancient biolattice rumored to predate Dawn's sentinel network. Today, the Remera's crew would attempt first contact armed not with weapons, but with the covenant of shared tomorrow, the route codex, and the empathy born from countless trials beneath bolonite storms and dream-forged alliances. Dr. Anika Jo hovered beside Orion, her fingers dancing over a hollow console. "Approach vector locked," she reported. "Atmospheric entry in T-10 minutes. Sensor sweeps detect high concentrations of silica crystals in the upper strata, likely to create those crystal wind phenomena. We'll need the Grove Protocol's harmonic shields to dampen abrasive particle erosion on entry." Orion nodded. "Understood. Commander Hayes, prepare the Phoenix for descent. We'll bring the ecological delegation, Elena, Jax, and 2 Sentinel liaison officers. No military escort, this is a cultural envoy, first and foremost." Commander Leela Hayes saluted. "Yes, Captain. I'll schedule briefing in 5. In the briefing chamber, the senior team gathered. Dr. Elena Maris, chief xenobiologist, whose careful stewardship had stabilized Hypno-7 yields and led restoration projects on Dawn. Jax Argus Niuri, the android science officer, repository of Sentinel codices and harmonic algorithms. Ambassadors Kale Thorne and Aria Liss, 2 Sentinel liaison officers, genetically engineered humans infused with Sentinel lectin analogs, capable of perceiving living glyph patterns instinctively. Lieutenant Marcos Ridley, security coordinator, unarmed but ever vigilant in protecting the Covenant's integrity. Orion addressed them. "Hesperus awaits below a curtain of emerald nebula dust. Sensor data suggests a network of crystalline spires, wind forests that sing in high-frequency harmonics when the desert winds blow. The planet's indigenous life remains unknown. It could be plant, mineral, or a hybrid biosphere. Our mission, to offer the covenant of shared tomorrow, share human and sentinel stories, and learn their root language equivalents if they exist. We expect first contact to be delicate. Any coercion or misunderstanding could fracture this fragile alliance before it begins." Elena exhaled. "We'll approach with the humility Dawn taught us. Ambassadors Thorne and Liss, your insights into Sentinel Protocol will guide us." Aria Liss bowed. We carry the root codex in our neural pathways. I will listen for living glyphs in their environment and translate at the moment they emerge. Calthorn placed a hand over his heart. And I will offer them our covenant's first echo, the offering of human memory, our myths of sea and sky. Orion concluded, let's bring our best selves to Hesperus. Dismissed. 60 minutes later, the Phoenix's hull shimmered as it pierced Hesperus's outer dust clouds. Below spread an expanse of rosy-hued desert sand composed of pink silicates that caught the light like tiny prisms. Jagged crystal spires, some reaching kilometers high, jutted from the dunes, forming labyrinthine corridors through which vibrant teal winds funneled. As the shuttle descended, the hull's harmonic shields resonated softly, transforming the high-frequency sing of the wind from a shrill howl into a soothing, bell-like chime. Elena monitored her scanners. No signs of large fauna. Atmospheric composition is breathable after minor scrub filtration, trace argon, negligible toxins. Life signatures clustered at the base of the tallest spires, likely microbial mats or sessile organisms. The Phoenix touched down in a shallow basin cradled by 3 towering crystal trees. Their translucent luminescence glowed with inner violite pale violet hues that pulsed faintly. The wind-carved bark shimmered like Gondwana glass. Around the landing site, patterns in the sand formed concentric rings, deliberate glyphs carved by unknown hands or claws. Aureolus stepped onto the soft pink sand. Barefoot, she closed her eyes, inhaling the crystalline air. I sense a living resonance, she murmured. The planet's biocrystal network seems conscious. These glyph rings are active root echoes, sentinel-like signals, but refined through mineral channels. Calthorn joined her, crouching to trace a swirling glyph with his finger. Instantly, the glyph glowed under his touch, sending ripples through the sand. They respond to contact. It is an invitation or welcome, like the living cathedral's early pulses. Orion nodded to Lieutenant Ridley. Set up perimeter sensors and field scanners. But no weapons, only fields to ensure environmental safety. Ridley unfurled a lightweight sensor array, its nodes resembling sentinel buds. Within moments, a holographic grid mapped the surrounding spires and glyph rings. The patterns faded, leaving behind a network of glowing lines converging on a central locus, a crystal grove at the basin's heart. Elena approached the grove. These spires may be living crystalline plants analogous to root pillars on dawn. They synthesize bioluminescent silica through a form of coralline metabolism. She reached out to touch the nearest trunk and recoiled as a flash of violet light arced through her suit's gloves. Jax chimed through the comm. Harmonic identification, the touch triggered a defensive resonance clarification query. They seek our harmonic signature before granting closer access. Orion stepped forward, voice calm. Guardians of Hesperus, we come in peace from a distant world, bearing songs and molecules of friendship. We offer the covenant of shared tomorrow, an alliance forged in trust beneath alien storms and dream-woven ties. He activated the handheld harmonic emitter, releasing a sequence of sentinel root codices harmonized with human vocal cords, an echo of the dawn ceremonies. The crystal spires quivered, then chimed back in a cascading arpeggio, their own crystalline language unfolding in shimmering glyphs across the sand. Aureolus closed her eyes. They're asking for our stories encoded as light patterns. She tapped her wrist data pad and triggered the first offering, a hollow projection of Earth's coral reefs dancing fields of living color, animated with the sound of whale song. As the projection shimmered beneath the desert winds, the crystal grove's luminescence brightened, adopting the reef's color palette: azure, coral, and violet. Then Calethorn stepped forward with his own gift, a sentinel root hologram of the living cathedral, pulsing in emerald and gold, the memory of dawn's foliate symphony. The grove's glow merged with those hues, weaving a new pattern, interlaced filaments of human marine life and sentinel root life. Lieutenant Ridley recorded the event. Multispectral fusion detected crystal network integrating our two offerings, generating a novel glyph matrix. The ground beneath the grove vibrated softly. A fissure appeared at the basin's center, revealing a living pool of bioluminescent liquid crystal mixed with microbial life, shimmering like molten glass. JAXA's sensors identified its composition: a saline solution rich in silica, organic lectins, and trace hypnose 7 analogs. Elena stepped closer. This must be their root sap equivalent, mineralized in crystal form. They offer us a sample of their living essence. She extended a sterile vial and collected a droplet of the sap pool. As the liquid touched the vial's sensor ring, the crystalline grove responded with a luminous cascade, projecting glyphs through the air. Unity beneath sky and sand. From root to reef, we understand. We share our crystal sap in kind. A living link for hearts aligned. Take our essence as we take yours. And may our bond become the cure. Overcome with emotion, Orion bowed his head. We accept in gratitude. May our worlds heal each other across the void. In the distance, a gentle breeze carried the spire chime across the desert, no longer a lone wind crystal wind, but a chorus of two planetary melodies entwined. Back aboard the Remora, the sap sample was analyzed in the biolab. Dr. Maris discovered a unique protein-mineral hybrid chrysalisin, a silica-bound lectin capable of forming living biocrystals under sentinel harmonic fields. Potential applications ranged from self-healing hull coatings to bio-integrated habitat domes on lifeless moons. Meanwhile, the Council chamber prepared to ratify an addendum, the Hesperus Accord, Article 18 of the Covenant of Shared Tomorrow. Under Ambassador Cyriel's endorsement, the coalition codified the first known mineral-based biosphere alliance, validating that life could root itself not only in living soil, but in living crystal. Captain Vale addressed the holographic delegates one final time. Hesperus has shown us that life blossoms in many forms rooted in soil, dream, or crystal. Our covenant is not a treaty of dominion, but a promise of discovery, respect, and shared destiny. Let this new accord guide every explorer who dares to listen, and every envoy who dares to give. As the holographic chamber lights glowed with crystal green and sentinel gold their fullest, Orion knew the journey had grown ever richer, and that wherever the Remora sailed next, they would carry the living memory of three worlds: Earth, Dawn, and now Hesperus, united by roots, dreams, and crystalline echoes across the stars. The Phoenix shuttle glided away from the basin of the living crystal grove, its hull still resonating with chrysalis harmonics. Captain Orion Vale stood at the viewport, watching the spires recede into the pink sand desert. Below, the Sentinel liaison officers Ambassador Aureolus and Ambassador Cale Thorne reviewed the SAP integration logs, while Dr. Elena Maris and Jax Argus Neary prepared for their next mission, a descent into the subterranean caverns rumored to lie beneath Hesperus's crystal forests. Dr. Anika Jo joined Orion at the deck's control console. Captain, topographical scans indicate a network of crystal tunnels starting 1.2 kilometers beneath the Grove Basin. Seismic resonance matches living patterns like an underground root lattice of glass. She tapped the hollow map. Biolight readings peak in 3 junctions. If we want to deepen the accord, we should explore the heart cavern, the central nexus of the crystalline biosphere. Orion nodded, anticipation sharpening his senses. Then we proceed. Elena, prepare the subterranean expedition kits, protective resonance suits, beta cores with sentinel peptides, and portable harmonic generators. He turned to the ambassadors. Arya, Cale, your enhanced codex perception will guide us through living glyph seals. Marcus, coordinate with the Phoenix's NAV computer for precise rendezvous coordinates. He saluted each of them. Let's go deeper. 1. Descent into glass forest roots. An hour later, the Phoenix's landing skids whispered against the crystalline helipad near the basin's edge. Above them, the glass trees towered like frozen fireworks. Beneath, a circular hatch of sculpted quartz previously dormant now glowed with a soft violet pulse. As the shuttle's ramp extended, Ambassador Liss approached and placed her palm against the hatch's surface. A chord of living resonance rippled through the quartz, and the hatch split into petal-like segments, folding downwards to reveal a spiral staircase carved from iridescent crystal. Each step glowed in turn, guiding the party into the depths. Lieutenant Marcos Ridley led the way, his Pathfinder drone illuminating the corridor. The walls reflected polychromatic biolight, painting every visor with dancing patterns. Dr. Maris, trailing sensors behind her, traced the living glyphs that line the walls, tiny fractal symbols shifting like moving ice. Each glyph is part of the biosphere's memory archive, Maris observed. They record generations of crystal-based life. We must proceed with reverence. Any misstep could erase data from their living library. Jax Neary's optics flickered. Harmonic analysis confirms linked glyphs. They resonate at 15.7 Hz within the Sentinel threshold, but modulated by chrysalis analogs. We'll need to synchronize our generators at this frequency to progress safely. Orion gestured to the team. Deploy the generators. Let's open the path. 2. The gallery of living glyphs. With harmonic generators engaged, the glyph pathways lit a continuous trail. The staircase widened into a vast cavern, dozens of crystalline columns formed a gallery, each etched with complex living stories. Some told of storms that shaped the sands, others depicted shimmering beings dancing in windswept domes. The air was cool and still, yet alive with muted chimes as their footsteps echoed. Ambassador Thorn stepped forward, hand raised. I perceive an invitation. The life forms ask us to share a new story, one drawn from our time on Hesperus. Only then will the path to the heart cavern open. Dr. Jo tapped her dynamic transcriptor. She began narrating in a gentle tone. From desert bloom to crystal cocoon, we stand beneath your vaulted stems. We bring tales of sand alchemy, storms that carve 1,000 prisms. We sing of seeds we planted, of roots we restored. Let our stories intertwine with your living glass. As her voice wove through the cavern, the columns pulsed in response. Bands of violet and gold spiraled upward, sounding a gentle hum. The gallery's ceiling erupted in a cascade of falling luminescent filaments like slow drifting snow made of light. The column slid apart, revealing a narrow corridor spiraling downward. At its mouth, a crystalline arch beckoned. 3. The subterranean heart cavern. Torch-like drones hovered ahead, lighting the final passage into a cavern of staggering scale. The walls glowed with bioluminescent lichens that mirrored constellations, Hesperus's night sky encoded in living rock. At the center rose the heart crystal, a colossal octahedral structure, its facets shimmering with every hue recorded across the planet's climate cycles. The heart's surface was alive, microfractures that pulsed like veins, each beat a fragment of the biosphere's consciousness. The air vibrated with a low, harmonious drone that reverberated through bone and steel alike. Orion stepped forward, raising his voice. Guardians of the heart, we come as friends. We bring trust, valor, and the covenant of shared tomorrow. We have learned to grow with dawn's roots, to dream with sentinel hearts, and to sing with crystal winds. Now we seek to join our harmony to yours so that our futures may be woven together in living light. The heart crystal's facets shimmered and then split into rays that shot upward, like a silent meteor shower. The rays converged overhead, forming a luminous glyph, a ring of entwined root and crystal. It spun, then dissolved into thousands of motes that drifted toward the party. Dr. Maris reached out and caught a mote on her glove. It felt warm like a living ember. She examined her sensors. This mote carries a biocrystalline enzyme Hespran root glassin capable of reinforcing living glass into self-repairing structures. They offer it to us as a gift. Ambassador Liz translated the final glyph message, her voice echoing in the cavern. In root and crystal, life persists. We offer you this here said. A living essence for worlds unborn. Guard it well, as we will guard you. In harmony, we endure. Orion bowed his head, emotion coursing through him. We accept with gratitude. May Hirtset unite our science and your wisdom. 4. Emergence and integration. As the Hirtset motes diffused through the air, Jack's Neary synthesis ports captured samples for immediate analysis. The heart crystal's resonance slowed, folding the glyph ceiling back into silence. Ambassador Thorn guided the party back through the glyph gallery, each column now glowing with shared human Hesperan stories. Back aboard the Phoenix, Dr. Maris and Dr. Joe curated the Heartseed's molecular profile, an intricate lectin silica matrix that could form transparent shelter films and supports for xenoflora on unexplored worlds. Jax integrated the patterns into the root codex, expanding the Covenant's protocol to include crystalline biospheres. In the council chamber, Captain Vale presented the Hesperus Accord to Article 19, Heertzed custody. Coalition research stations must maintain Heertzed within secure biosynthetic vaults, co-managed by human and Sentinel representatives. Article XX, Crystal Alliance. Any planetary expedition encountering crystalline life must offer reciprocal stories and artifacts before any resource integration. Article XXI, via Crystal Compendium, the Coalition archives will now include a Crystal Codex, preserving Hesperan glyph narratives alongside Dawn's root codex. As the final glyphs faded, Admiral Kray's hologram declared, "Thus shall we venture ever wiser, bearing the seeds of 3 living worlds. May the Covenant guide our course, and may our roots and crystals grow together among the stars." Epilogue, A New Dawn in the Void. That evening, Captain Orion Vale returned to the observation deck, where the assembled crew watched Hesperus shrink to a pale prism in the void. Next to him, Dr. Maris held a small vial glowing with Heertzed motes. 3 worlds, each alive in its own harmony, she said softly. And now, our covenant spans soil, dream, and crystal. What wonder calls us next? Orion placed a hand on her shoulder. Wherever life sings in silent languages, we will listen. We will share our stories, and in every root, every dream, every crystal, we will find the echoes of home. As the Remora accelerated toward unexplored systems, its corridors hummed with living glyphs, a testament to alliances forged beneath alien storms, within dream-wrought networks, and beneath crystal canopies. Humanity's voyage had become a journey of empathy, of respect, and of shared roots among the stars, an ever-unfolding epic destined to outlive even the brightest of galaxies. The Remora drifted in silent orbit around Archipelago Prime, a verdant world set to be the next Covenant trial. Captain Orion Vale stood in the observation gallery, where floating root codex and crystal codex glyphs interwove in mid-air, living archives from Dawn and Hesperus, now augmented by 2 new memory streams, the dream-woven codices of deep space hibernation and the Heertzed matrix of crystalline life. Below, neon jungle covered thousands of islands, each ringed by phosphorescent reefs, Archipelago Prime's unique blend of coral and forest root ecosystems. Dr. Elena Maris joined him, her data pad glowing with new entries. We've received preliminary scans. Archipelago Prime's biosphere incorporates both aquatic and arboreal frameworks. We detected sentinel root analogs in submerged roots, and crystalline reef structures on the atolls. It's a living mosaic, a perfect third pillar for our Covenant trilogy. Orion nodded. Excellent. Today's mission, to weave Prime's living codex into our Covenant of shared tomorrow. We go ashore as friends, offer our combined memory archives, and listen for Prime's own living glyphs. Down in the shuttle bay, The hybrid research boat seekers promise lay moored alongside the Phoenix. Its hull, sheathed in chrysalis-infused plating, glimmered in the moonlight. Aureolus and Calethorn prepared the ambassadorial kits, a crystal glass sphere containing Hirsched motes, a trio of root-woven scroll casings filled with sentinel-encoded human myths, and a dream interface resonator loaded with the hibernation dream sequences. Lieutenant Marcos Ridley joined them. Captain, the surface security grid is stable. We're cleared to land at Calypso Bay, where 3 sentinel root atolls merge with biocrystalline coral reefs. A natural amphitheater awaits our memory offerings. Orion placed a reassuring hand on Marcos's shoulder. Let's make history. 1. The Amphitheater of Living Reams. As dawn broke over Calypso Bay, the Seeker's Promise glided through phosphorescent waters toward a crescent of white sand flanked by towering living columns, ancient mangrove roots fused with crystalline coral-lined spires. The roots glowed emerald at their tips, while the coral shimmered in violet and gold. A gentle breeze carried the subtle scent of sea salt and chlorophyll, as if the world itself exhaled welcome. Ambassadors Lys and Thorn stepped ashore, placing the Hirsched sphere on a carved basalt plinth, an existing sentinel marker. They activated the resonator. A cascade of prismatic light scattered across the amphitheater, the sphere broke into motes of biolight, each drifting to embed in root and coral alike. The amphitheater pulsed once in acknowledgement. Dr. Maris proceeded to unroll the sentinel root scrolls. Each scroll codified a human sentinel narrative, the story of Earth's first song, the legend of dawn storms, the dream-born visions of the deep space trial. As she spoke, translator glyphs formed in the air, transmissions of both human speech and sentinel tree language, interwoven in harmony. Finally, Captain Vale raised the dream sequence resonator. A trio of volunteers emerged from the Phoenix's medical bay, survivors of the hibernation cycle, each holding a glowing hollow sphere. They activated it in unison, projecting the shared dreamscapes, root forests merging with crystal reefs, reef creatures singing to sentinel vines, all drifting through coral-line archways. The amphitheater's living columns absorbed the narrative, their biolight amplifying in rhythmic response. A soft hum rolled across the bay. The sentinel coral guardians, amphibious biocorals shaped like spiraling nautilus, emerged from tide pools, their polyps extended like receptive petals. Their voices were a chorus of coral clicks and bioluminescent pulses. Aureolus closed her eyes, interpreting the final glyph message. We have heard your trilogy of living codices. Root, dream, crystal woven in light and life. In our coral-line veins we etch your stories. And in your hearts we plant our own memory. Let this amphitheater stand as proof that worlds can speak without words, and that every legacy begins with the gift of trust. Captain Vale stepped forward, voice filled with reverence. Archipelago Prime, we accept your memory into our covenant. May these atolls be the meeting point of 3 living alliances, and may our shared stories guide every voyage yet to come. 2. The Final Covenant, a Triad of Worlds. Back aboard the Remora, the council chamber summoned a special auditors' session. Holographic columns now displayed 4 living archives: the root codex of dawn, the dream codex of hibernation, the crystal codex of Hesperus, and the coral codex of Archipelago Prime. Captain Vale addressed the global delegates one last time. Esteemed Council, we have fulfilled our journey, from dawn's subterranean whispers to deep space dreams, from Hesperus's crystalline heart to Prime's coral line amphitheater. Our covenant of shared tomorrow has grown into the covenant of 3 pillars: root, dream, and crystal coral. We now propose our final additions. Article XXII, Dream Bridge Charter. All hibernation protocols must integrate dream language exchanges as standard practice. Article XXIII, Crystal Coral Alliance. Biocrystal and coral biospheres are equal partners in resource harmony. Article XXIV, Legacy Triad Archive. The Coalition archives will maintain a living nexus of 3 pillars, updated with each new world of living memory discovered. A hush fell over the chamber as the holographic glyphs of the Triad hovered in space. Admiral Cray's hologram glowed with pride. Captain Vale and your remarkable crew have inaugurated a new epoch of interstellar exploration. No longer will we conquer worlds, we will listen to their codices, share our own, and grow together. I move to ratify Articles XXII, XXIV. One by one, delegates rose to second, and Judge Corinthus' gavel sealed the Triad Covenant. The chamber erupted in living light: emerald, violet, golden, and coral melding into a shimmering tapestry that spoke of unity across every biome encountered. That evening, Captain Orion Vale stood once more in the observation gallery, the nexus of 3 pillars swirling overhead. The living glyphs danced in ceaseless motion, root vines spiraling into dream clouds, crystalline edifices arching toward coral reefs. Each symbol told a story of trust forged, trials endured, and friendship sealed across the void. Dr. Elena Maris joined him, a vial of Hirschzed in one hand and a coral-infused lectin bead in the other. Our legacy is written across 3 worlds' living codices that will guide explorers for centuries. Orion smiled, eyes shining with hope. And tomorrow, who knows? Perhaps we'll find a world of living wind vines, or a planet of dream-woven stone. Wherever life sings its silent language, we will be there, ready to listen, ready to share, and ready to grow. As the Remor's engines ignited for its next voyage, the observation gallery's living tapestry pulsed in farewell, an eternal benediction from dawn, from Hesperus, and from Archipelago Prime. The covenant of 3 pillars glowed brightest of all, a promise that in the vastness of space, no world stands alone, and that every story finds its place in the song of the cosmos. And so, beneath the watchful eyes of sentinel root, crystalline heart, and coral bloom, humanity's voyage of empathy and discovery continued, rooted in trust, dreaming in unity, and shining with the living light of countless worlds. Title: Covenant of 3 Pillars, a triad of worlds united in living memory. Description: Join Captain Orion Vale and the crew of the Remora on an epic interstellar journey across 3 astonishing worlds: Dawn's bioluminescent root forests, Hesperus's crystalline heart caverns, and Archipelago Prime's coral root amphitheater. Through trials of storms, shared dreams, and living codices of root, crystal, and coral, humanity forges the covenant of 3 pillars, a living alliance grounded in trust, reciprocity, and mutual discovery. Experience the stirring saga of how life's silent languages become the greatest bridge between worlds.